Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video. Harry followed the trail lit by the tracking spell and flew towards Rivendell. Frodo kept a firm grip on Harry the entire flight. Unfortunately, the tower they flew to was still inhabited by more than a dozen orcs and at least half a dozen Uruk-hai. Thankfully, there wasn't a full army in Rivendell, but there were more enemies than Harry felt comfortable taking on with only Frodo at his side. While Harry felt confident in his skills, he had never been tested against such numbers before. Harry itched to test his new skills, but knew that keeping Frodo safe was more important. The wizard landed in what he hoped was a safe area and put a finger to his lips to keep Frodo from asking any questions. Partly because he didn't trust that they wouldn't be overheard without first putting up privacy wards, and partly because he had no plan as of yet, meaning Harry had no answers to give. Rivendell was a broken down outpost. The walls were cracked, broken in some areas, and missing in others. Harry and Frodo were perched just above an open staircase between two towers. The two stayed silent and watched as the orcs and Uruk-hai went about their day. Frodo ensured his hood was up and stayed as still as he could manage. Harry set privacy and a notice-me-not wards before putting his broom back into his pouch. Below them was a courtyard filled with barrels, carts, orcs, and Uruk-hai. Unfortunately, Sam was nowhere to be seen, so they'd have to search through the place to find him. But first, they'd have to get past all of the enemies without getting caught. Inspiration struck Harry as an Uruk-hai passed the half wall. He and Frodo were crouched behind. The wizard summoned one of the Uruk-hai's arrows from the quiver hanging at his hip. Frodo's brows furrowed in question until Harry pulled his bow and knocked the stolen arrow. Frodo grinned, looked at the courtyard below them, and pointed at the perfect target. A number of orcs bickering with each other. To the left of the orcs were Uruk-hai that looked disgusted and bored. Harry grinned, gave a small nod, and took aim at one of the orcs. The arrow hit its target square in the throat. Harry immediately threw another Notice-Me-Not spell over their area to further hide him and Frodo. All enemies within that area turned their attention upwards to see where the arrow had originated from, and all they saw was the Uruk-hai that was still walking along the staircase, bow in hand. That's when the fighting started. Orc against Uruk-hai, orc against orc wizard, and hobbit against them all. Predictably, the foolish humans fell to the orc army. What Ermrajir hadn't considered was that any of the humans still retained self-preservation instincts enough to escape. After all, they willingly came to Osgiliath with the full knowledge that there was an orc army that they already ran away from, waiting for them. Yet a few humans had indeed managed to escape with their lives. Barely. The slaughter boosted the morale of the orcs immensely. It had been a long time since they had fresh meat that wasn't their own kin, but before they could mutilate the bodies, Gothmog demanded the heads of each of the humans. That did not sit well with those under his command. The human heads were a much-desired delicacy with tender brains and juicy eyes, but the orc leader had other plans for their prisoners. Ermrajir watched with a mild disinterest. Under normal circumstances, the Witch King would have fully supported Gothmog's plan. Perhaps he'd have even rewarded the orc leader for his ingenuity. Spreading fear amongst your enemy was always a good tactic in warfare. Ermrajir was almost ashamed he hadn't come up with the idea himself. The Witch King sent his Hellhawk down to feast as he stood above them all. Ermrajir's gaze was once more directed over Pelennor Field and beyond. Gothmog came to the Witch King for more directions, but Ermrajir wasn't ready to give them. The Witch King made the orcs stand there silently. His Hellhawk had returned before Ermrajir finally spoke. On the morrow, send forth all legions. The siege towers will join you on the battlefield. Do not stop the attack until the city is taken. Slay them all. Gothmog stood silently, taking in the enormity of the task put to him. His gaze swept in the direction of the White Stone City before he asked, "What of the White Wizard?" Ermrajir dismissed Gothmog's concerns. He is of no consequence. The orcs at Cirith Ungol had outnumbered the Uruk-hai, but their vast numbers weren't to their advantage. Their horde dwindled as there was fighting within the orc ranks as well. Most of the orcs were easily killed by the Uruk-hai and would have been completely overrun had Harry not assisted with the dwindling of the ranks on both sides. The wizard would summon an arrow, Frodo would point out a target, and Harry would shoot it. That system worked quite well for the pair until there were only 3 Uruk-hai remaining. The 3 were looking around for more foes, swords in hand, and bloodlust in their eyes. Frodo bit his lip and looked to Harry in concern, but Harry wasn't worried. The wizard grinned, held up a finger to gain Frodo's attention, and then pointed down at the last 3 foes. Harry flicked his finger from one Uruk-hai towards another, using the banishing charm to fling one combatant at the other. The Uruk-hai looked at each other with growls of challenge and attacked. Shaking his head, the hobbit just said, "Remind me never to anger you." Harry chuckled softly, not commenting on Frodo's observation, and recast the tracking charm. Sam is up in that tower. The 2 moved up the staircase towards the tower on their left, winding their way towards the top. There was a cackling sound coming from above them, followed by a scream of terror. Frodo cried out, "Sam," and ran up the remaining stairs, pulling Sting as he went. The wizard wasn't too far behind the hobbit. Harry was amazed at how fast that little halfling could move when motivated, and heard more yelling before he made it into the room at the top of the tower. Spelunker Field, where the battle began, had once been filled with orcs and trolls. Sauron's army started with the usual tactics of spreading fear and discourse. Trolls fired the trebuchets, while the orcs aided with the reloading. They had released their prisoners back to the people of Gondor by lobbing their severed heads over the closed gates and into the streets of the white stone city. Other trolls began battering against the city's gates, while the rest of the army waited impatiently, chanting encouragement in their guttural voices. By the time the gate had been breached, the reinforcements from both Rohan and the Easterlings had arrived. Then the fighting truly began. Orcs and trolls flooded the White City, while the Earlangas clashed with the Easterlings. Unarmroser remained at the highest peak of Osgiliath, watching over Pelennor Field as the Mumakil trampled the riders from Rohan. The Witch King once again noted how little the humans cared for their lives as they threw themselves at the larger beasts in a vain attempt to stop them from reaching the Whitestone City. The death screams coming from below called to his fell beast. Unarmroser's hands tightened on the harness to keep his mount from attacking, and the Hellhawk danced beneath him in frustration. A man in golden armor called out an order to his troops, "Rally to me, to me." With an enemy general on the battlefield nearby, the Witch King felt the pull to confront the human and hissed at the pain. Sauron's pull, lure, commands, and demands were growing more enticing and harder to deny. Urmazor was nearly blinded by the need to kill in his name, but he closed his eyes, picturing his master's young, kind face, the understanding in his green eyes, and gripped the reins tighter. Just as Urmazor felt more controlled over his actions, screams came from the river. The black boats of the Corsair had arrived, and with it came a new terror: death. The lure of the hunt, the scent of death and destruction, and the beauty of the fear that came with it was too much for the Witch King to deny. Sauron demanded a response. The Nazgul let out a scream of agony. His Hellhawk let out a scream of anticipation. Urmazor groaned. "Please, forgive me, master," and took to the air. Frodo was straddling a twitching body when Harry arrived. The hobbit's sword was plunged into the orc's back. Frodo grunted as he twisted his entire body to jar the sword loose. The blue shine of Sting was fading rapidly as black blood pooled under them. Harry stilled for a moment to take it all in. He had only arrived moments after Frodo, yet the hobbit had things under control, allowing the young wizard a moment to breathe in relief. During the commotion created by Frodo, Sam had managed to back away to lean against a wall where he slouched, gasping in pain. The blonde was holding his arms across his chest, where blood gathered and ran down his torso like a slow seeping river. There was so much blood, Harry's calm fled as quickly as it came, and panic threatened to take over. Harry gasped out, "Sam!" Harry darted to his new friend. Dropping to his knees beside the injured hobbit, Harry grabbed his pouch from around his neck and summoned 2 potions, blood replenishing and healing. Where are you hurt? Sam didn't speak, just grunted and moved his arm slightly. Harry first thought Sam's arm had been cut, but the movement revealed a long gash across Sam's torso that he had been trying to hold together. Frodo joined them after having ensured the orc was indeed dead and not getting back up. The hobbit allowed his sword to clatter to the ground and asked, "What can I do?" Harry had to think. He clenched his hands to keep them from shaking and took a deep breath. After the vision Harry had been pulled into, Luna made a point of helping Harry train in a number of useful spells, including healing ones. Up until now, Harry had been healing animals, not people. Harry mumbled to himself, apply pressure to slow the bleeding, clean the wound, healing spell, potions. Harry looked at Frodo. Sam is already applying pressure. I have healing spells that can clean the wound, stop the bleeding, and mend the skin. In the meantime, try feeding him this. Harry held up a vial. This helps his body replenish the blood he's lost. Now I'm warning you, potions taste nasty, but they work. Make sure he drinks it. Frodo sat behind Sam, allowing his friend to lean against him instead of the wall. After some prodding from Frodo, Sam finally moved his arm away from his chest, and Harry finally got a good look at the injury. Harry used a Turgio spell to siphon the blood. Sam shivered at the feel of Harry's magic. Frodo urged Sam to drink the potion. Sam groaned. "That's vile, Mr. Frodo." "It will help," Frodo countered and made his friend drink the second potion down. By the time Sam finished drinking the potion, Harry successfully healed the wound. Sam's skin was sporting a thin pink line that would fade over time. Harry took the empty vial back from Frodo. When Sam saw his chest, he looked surprised. "That's it?" "That's it," Harry agreed and shrugged. "It won't be big, but you have a battle scar." Sam deflated with relief, and Frodo snickered. "Samwise the Brave." "You didn't taste those things," Sam pouted. Frodo asked, "Are you hurt anywhere else?" Sam glanced at Harry as if afraid to admit any other wounds, and Frodo poked his shoulder. "Tell me, Sam. We can't help you if you don't tell us if there's something wrong." "Please don't make me drink any more of those potions, Mr. Frodo," Sam squeaked. "They're powerful, disgusting." Harry was shaking his head in amusement as Frodo reprimanded his best friend. Ermarazor landed his Hellhawk in the middle of the conflict and dismounted. He did not rush his movements, but moved with purpose and assuredness all around the Witch King. The humans on both sides of the war killed and maimed each other. Many were crying out from their wounds or were simply dying. He removed his favorite weapon from the saddle harness, looked at his faithful Hellhawk, and set him free to hunt, feast upon their flesh. He watched as his loyal Hellhawk screeched in joy and took flight, seeking prey. The Witch King was the last of the Nazgul. The power Sauron had over the rings was now focused entirely on the Witch King of Angmar. Gripping the pommel of his mace, the Witch King raised it over his head with a swing of his arms and let out a long soul-wrenching scream of pain, acquiescence, and defeat. Ermarazor wasn't strong enough to ignore his commands anymore, and was no longer certain that he wanted to. Where did Ermarazor's will end, and Sauron's begin? Did it matter? Perhaps at one time, but now death was his only companion. Swinging the mace with ease around in an arching move, Ermarazor laughed as bodies flew, crushed, broken, and bloodied. The Witch King no longer cared who he killed. Orc, Haradrim, human, or beast. Harry pulled the map out once more, and the hobbits looked at the path they were going to be taking. There were scattered orc camps that were still manned throughout Mordor that they'd have to try to avoid whenever possible. From the tower at Cirith Ungol, Harry, Frodo, and Sam could see the scattered fires that were lit across the land, and the volcano that was their goal. "Still feels so far away," Frodo commented as he stared at Mount Doom from the safety of the tower window. "It is far, but we've come further. What's a few more days of travel?" Sam asked with a crooked grin as he came up to stand beside his friend. The hobbit had changed into a clean shirt, and instead of throwing out the bloody torn one, Sam kept it as a reminder to be more careful in the future. Harry folded his map again, and as he was putting it away, he felt his mirror vibrate. The young wizard immediately withdrew the mirror and answered the call. "Naneth, Lenovo had a dream," Galadriel said without preamble. "She saw you in a fortress with the Nazgul." The woman sighed in relief. I am pleased to see you survive the encounter. I had to release them, so we met in a safe location, Harry explained. They are gone. Galadriel asked, a frown marring her beautiful features. Even the Witch King... He is the only one left, Harry stated. I will free him once this over. Harry. Anne Galadriel closed her eyes briefly and looked as if she were temporarily pained. Then his mother sighed heavily before telling him he cannot fight him alone. The Witch King will fall. But no man can kill him, Harry objected. Ione Galadriel touched the mirror lovingly as she repeated, the Witch King will fall. Ermroser stopped swinging his mace and allowed it to hang limply at his side. There were no foes within his vicinity. None were within striking distance or approaching him. He looked at the Rohirrim as they moved away, further towards the gates of Minas Tirith. It was that same rider, the general in gold armor, that had called to his troops earlier, that was steering them further from his reach. The Witch King screamed his frustration, and his Hellhawk answered, swooping for the Golden Man and his horse. The Nazgul was pleased to see the man topple over and swiftly moved in their direction. When he drew nearer, he was surprised to see a small warrior standing between the Hellhawk and its feast. The Witch King was amused at the warrior's audacity and quickened his pace. A brave soul was one he would enjoy breaking. Ermurozor heard the small warrior warning off his mount. I will kill you if you touch him. The Nazgul stood beside his Hellhawk and scoffed, do not stand between a Hellhawk and his meal. He killed it. It is his to feast upon. The fell beast snapped at the warrior but didn't score a hit. The beast went in once again and again. But on the fourth attempt, the Witch King watched as the soldier beheaded his mount. Ermurozor had watched the entire byplay without interfering. His loyal mount dropped to the ground with a staggering thump. Ermurozor placed a hand on his Hellhawk and felt its life leave its body. Rest, my loyal one. Ermurozor took up his mace once more and rested it on his shoulder. He looked upon the small soldier standing defiantly before him, humming in approval. Come, if you dare, come and meet death. Harry frowned as a sudden rush of doubt niggled at him. Ermurozor is a Nazgul. He will not die. Not fully. If he falls, I will still need to release him. It is his connection to the ring that keeps him tied to this realm. The blue lightning of Minas Morgul surged for a brief moment. Then just as suddenly it died out. The entire area fell into an eerie dark stillness. Sauron's eye flared in annoyance, while Harry looked at the old fortress and let out a slow breath. The wizard understood the significance even if the hobbits didn't seem to. Sam and Frodo were muttering to each other and pointing. Harry looked at his mother's image in the mirror. Once again, you are right. Of course you are. It is time to end this. He will redouble his efforts. Be safe, my son. Galadriel signed off and Harry pocketed his mirror. The wizard came up behind the hobbits that were still staring out of the window and put everything on the line for them. I have 2 quests to accomplish. The first is to ensure you, Frodo, get to Mount Doom and destroy the ring. The second is to ensure the fall of the Dark Lord. Harry looked out across Mordor. Sam, I appreciate everything you've done for Frodo, but time is no longer on our side. But Harry held out a hand. Yes, I know. You made a promise, Samwise the Brave, and as far as you were able, you have kept to that promise. Your actions are commendable, but you can't follow where we go next because we're no longer going to be walking. Frodo looked at Harry with wide eyes, not the broom. Yes, Harry said, and looked at Frodo. I'm sorry, but the last Ringwraith has fallen. Sauron has no one left to distract him. He will send every warrior he has searching for you. You're gonna leave me here? Sam asked, and he looked out over Mordor once again, looking utterly deflated. I'm never making it back to the Shire. Well, I could leave you at Minas Morgul until it's done, or... Harry's words tapered off, and he shook his head. No, that's not a viable option. What? Sam asked, and stepped closer to the wizard. I made a promise that I don't intend to break. Don't leave him, Samwise Gamgee, and I don't intend to. Transfiguration. Harry winced. It's a bit risky. Sam, Frodo moved to position himself beside his friend. This fortress is empty. Harry can do that poppin' thing. When we're done, we can pop back here for you. Waving off Frodo's words, Sam looked at Harry. What's this risky transfer thing? Well, Harry explained, Transfiguration is when you change something into something else. I could possibly change you into something smaller that can fit into Frodo's pack. That way you could ride along with us. Like an animal? Like a rock. A rock? Sam repeated. I said it was risky, Harry reminded the hobbit. It wouldn't be permanent, would it? Sam blanched at the thought. No, not permanent. The spell will break when I reverse it, or if I die. Harry said, I have no intention of dying before I finish my tasks. We'll keep you safe. Sam looked away for a moment to think through his options, and Frodo said a resounding no. I can't let you do this, Sam. No offense meant, Mr. Frodo, but it isn't up to you. Sam turned to Harry and gave him a small nod. Don't drop me and forget which rock is me. Harry grinned at Sam. I was kidding about making you a rock. He whipped out his wand, and in a flash of colorful light, an incantation, and a swish, swirl, tap of his wand. Later, Sam stood on all fours, small and furry. His nose twitched, and he sat back on his large back feet before systematically cleaning his whiskers with his front paws. Frodo looked down in shock. Sam! The hobbit scooped up the bunny and held him to his chest. A rabbit? You made Sam into a rabbit? It was either that or a ferret, Harry said, and rubbed the bunny's soft, furry head. The wizard then shrunk Sam's pack and dropped it into his pocket. Harry summoned his broom from his pouch and straddled it. Put Sam in your pack and let's go. Frodo hesitated, sighed, and followed directions. Harry gave Frodo a nod of reassurance and cast a disillusionment spell before taking to the sky. Hold on, Frodo. We're going straight for that volcano. They flew for Mount Doom, only hiding when the Eye of Sauron scanned the landscape in their area. The pair soared over the heads of numerous orcs that had no clue they were in the area, and didn't stop until they had neared their destination. Harry came to a stop at the side of the mountain, angling so the peak of the volcano hid them from the eye, and looked back at Frodo. Any ideas where we're headed exactly? Gandalf never said really. We only ever spoke of getting here. Frodo looked around, Harry as best he could. The wizard slowly shifted the broom, making it easier for the hobbit to see Mount Doom. We could go to the top and drop it down, I suppose. Harry pointed at the large crater at the top, but we'd have to be quick about it, since flying over the volcano would leave us fully exposed to the eye. Is that bad? Frodo asked. Harry looked at him in disbelief, but Frodo insisted, well, the Nazgul are gone, and it isn't likely the orcs could reach us up there. Harry shuddered. Remember when the eye looked for you back on Emon Hen? Frodo's eyes widened, and he nodded quickly. Harry nodded slowly along with the hobbit. It was the vilest thing I had ever experienced. I didn't see it, but I felt it. And had it lasted any longer, I think I would have been violently ill. Not sure I could control the broom through something like that. And if that happened while we're above the volcano, the rest of the implied scenario was left unsaid, but it was clearly understood. Death. Painful burning in lava. Death. Oh, Frodo said and gave a shudder of his own. That would be most unpleasant. Let's avoid the eye. The hobbit suddenly pointed near the peak of the volcano. Is there an opening? Right there? Harry searched where Frodo had pointed and, in the darkness, flew. The wizard hadn't seen what Frodo had pointed out, but trusted the hobbit's instincts. Besides, just sitting on his broom, debating, wasn't doing them any good. The closer they drew to Mount Doom, the more obvious the opening on the side of the volcano became. They flew to the mouth of the cavern and dismounted the broom. Harry dropped his broom back into his pouch, and the pair looked at each other. Frodo suddenly cocked his head, asking, "Mind turning Sam back into a hobbit now? I'd imagine he'd appreciate seeing this task through to the end." Harry nodded in agreement and waited for Frodo to pull Bunny Sam out of his pack. Harry grinned as Frodo held the rabbit to his chest. "Wish I had a camera." "Well, what?" Frodo asked. Harry gave a small shrug. "Just something from my world. They make pictures, images, drawings." When he saw recognition in Frodo's gaze, Harry continued, "Instead of having to draw things yourself, it would make it for you. Clever contraptions. Anyhow, I will show you my photo album someday. Set Sam down there if you would." Frodo reluctantly set the rabbit down. Bunny Sam twitched his nose once again and stood on his large back feet and looked around nervously. Harry was quick with the reversal spell before the rabbit ran away in fright. Sam shook his head as if to clear it and looked around at where they were. "Did you do it then, Mr. Frodo?" "No, Sam." Frodo put his hand on his friend's shoulder and gave it a squeeze. "You made a promise, and I wanted to make sure you could keep it. So we turned you back to yourself so you could be here for the inn. When they entered what they had assumed was a cave, they soon realized it wasn't truly a cave at all. The opening into the side of the volcano was simply a platform jutting over the flowing magma. Harry had begun walking towards the end of the peninsula and warned the hobbit, Samwise the Brave, if you fall, I'm not sure I can save you. So do be careful. Stop calling me that, Sam pouted at the wizard, and besides, I'm not that clumsy. Frodo grinned at his friend. Shall I name all the times you've nearly fallen off the edge of somewhere? No, Sam groused and crossed his arms over his chest, but Harry noted, with relief, the hobbit stayed clear of the edge, all the same. Harry gestured to Frodo. You'll have to take it out of the pouch. That was made with a part of Death's cloak, and I don't know if it will be destroyed by the lava. The moment the ring is out in the open, its effect will reach for you again. So, before you open that, brace yourself. And remember why we're here. Remember your home, the love of family and friends, whatever happy thoughts you can hold on to. The ring doesn't want to be destroyed, so it will fight you, filling you with any doubt, fear, or deep desire it can in order to trick you into keeping it safe. Frodo looked at Harry with fear naked in his open gaze. I don't know if I can do this. You're not alone, Mr. Frodo. We're here with you. Sam dared to come closer to the edge and stood by his friend's side. We're with you. Harry flicked his wrist and his wand snapped into his hand. This may help. Expecto Patronum. His stag burst forth, and instead of the stifling heat of magma, the area filled with warmth and positive energy that the Patronus exhumed, Frodo smiled at the beast and pulled Galadriel's phial from his pocket to press it to his chest. Thank you. Both of you. I couldn't have made it on my own. I know that. Putting the phial back in his pocket to free his hands, Frodo pulled the pouch from around his neck. He took a bracing breath and closed his eyes. Prongs nudged Frodo with his soft nose, and the hobbit smiled. Frodo opened the pouch and dropped the One Ring onto his palm. The hobbit's smile faded immediately, and Frodo grimaced. Destroy it, Mr. Frodo, Sam pleaded. Yes, Sam. Frodo looked at his friend. I must. Frodo looked at the one, ran a loving finger over the gold, and cried out with fear as he threw it into the lava. Frodo stumbled back as if he had just dropped a heavy burden. Sam gripped his shoulders, steadying his friend. Easy, Mr. Frodo, I've got you. The three stood there, breathing a sigh of relief for having accomplished what was thought impossible, and then the ground trembled with a force that knocked the trio off their feet. Magma erupted, splashing everything within its reach with a fiery wave of liquid death. Harry scrambled to his friends, grabbed hold of the hobbits, and thought of the closest place that would be safe for them to go to, and parroted with the pair. Harry held on to Frodo and Sam as they both doubled over, feeling queasy. Sam groused. I was hungry before you did that. Not sure I can ever eat again. You're a hobbit, Harry corrected Sam. You'll be hungry again in no time. Frodo tried to laugh, but only ended up groaning. There came a loud explosion, and the ground shook violently. Frodo allowed himself to drop to the floor on his arse, and held his head, asking, Where are we? The volcano was erupting. Harry started to explain when another explosion rocked the building. Okay, as erupting. I had to get us out quickly, and traveling with one extra isn't as difficult as it is with two. Sam looked at the wizard. That didn't answer the question. The hobbit then looked at their surroundings. Minas Morgul? I couldn't go far without risking injury to one or more of us, Harry shrugged unrepentantly, and I needed somewhere safe for us to land. We know the Nazgul are gone and left the place empty. So we go to Minas Tirith next? Frodo asked. That's where he said he was heading. Harry looked up and shook his head. No, I can sense him here, so I'll have to look for him. Since we know where the other three were, I imagine his chamber will be nearby. Sam gaped at Harry. You sense them? Well, Harry gave a bit of a shrug. Yes. It's not something pleasant, but it's there. A sort of pull, a sense of duty, like you need to do something, and you're being pulled by an invisible force. Harry looked towards the door, and it's really annoying. Frodo looked in the same direction that Harry was before asking, What is it? The Oathbreakers are moving again. I don't notice one or two ghosts unless they're close, but when it's the entire army, Harry's words tapered off and he shuddered. But the Witch King, he's, well, dead, but he's undead. That makes no sense. He's in limbo, but not like the other three were. The reason they were in their chambers was because that is where the other Nazgul had put them. Harry frowned and ruffled his hair as he scratched his scalp. I'm not sure if I'm making any sense. Sam winced. Not really, no. Harry walked towards the door to search for Merzer's body. The hobbits followed him. Harry pulled Sam's pack out of his pocket, resized it, and gave it back to him. Then Harry tried again. I'm sure you remember that. The one ring controls all of the other rings of power, which translates to the 9 rings given to the kings of men were controlled by Sauron. Frodo agreed. Sam nodded along, so Harry continued trying to explain as best he could. Apparently, it went further than just controlling the rings. It kept bringing the 9 back from the dead as wraiths, ring wraiths, or Nazgul, whichever you want to call them. Remember Giandor explained it? Anytime their body was destroyed, they came back to the world of the living and would be here in their chambers. No mere man could kill them. So, Merzer used his Morgul blade to stop his 3 brothers from going to Sauron. About my arrival here in Middle-earth, they couldn't come back as they had before. Their rings were removed, severing the connection, enough to keep them dormant. So someone killed the Witch King, or destroyed his body. Frodo frowned in thought as they went down the somewhat familiar path towards the chambers. Harry guessed. Seems the most likely scenario since he's here. I wonder who did it, Sam pondered. A hobbit, maybe? We aren't men, we're halflings. A dwarf, perhaps. Or an elf. They aren't men either. Male, adult males, yes, but not men. I haven't a clue who did it, and it really doesn't matter. Harry gave Sam a half grin and an amused shake of his head. I explained at the river back when we were all together that I'm the Maud. As the Maud, I can sense the spirits of the dead, wraiths, and ghosts. Harry paused and turned to open the door on his right. And there he is. Merzer laid on his bed. His body was unmoving, much as the other 3 had been. The hobbits followed Harry inside, and they stood at the Witch King's bedside. Harry's breath hitched as the man's torment hit him before he even touched the ring. Merzer, what's wrong? Harry asked as he placed his left hand on the dormant Witch King's forehead. The voice was a whisper of sound, deep and resonating with emotions. You showed me kindness, showed my men kindness, by releasing them from this burden, and I repaid you with betrayal. The young wizard smiled down at the prone, still body. You didn't betray me, Merzer. You did what you had to do. I did not resist the call. I killed in his name. The voice sounded desperate to be understood. You're a strong warrior and a good leader. How can you say I'm strong when I couldn't fight him? Merzer's voice was barely above a whisper when he finally spoke aloud. Master. The hobbits jumped when they actually heard the Witch King speak. Harry snorted in amusement. One must not argue with the Master of Death. Please. Merzer's voice shook with emotion. Forgive me. Harry placed his right hand on the ring, gripping it firmly. Of course, I forgive you. Rest now. Harry pulled the silver ring from the man's finger. The Witch King's body shuddered and disappeared with an audible sigh to be brought to Death's side for his final rest. Within moments, Merozar's armor, weapon, crown, and clothing crumbled to dust. Harry breathed deeply and stepped back as he dropped the last ring into his mokeskin pouch. The 3 stood in the empty room for a beat, all of them lost in thought, before Sam shifted his weight and asked, "Now what?" Frodo commented, "I think the volcano is done erupting." They walked to the nearest window and looked out over Mordor. From their vantage point, they could see that the lava still flowed, even though the volcano was no longer erupting, Barad-dûr destroyed, and the eye no longer hovered over Middle-earth. Harry turned to leave as he suggested, "We go to Minas Tirith." "I suppose. You don't have to come with me, but since we're done with our task, I imagine it's a good time to bring the Fellowship back together." Sam shared a look with Frodo and agreed. "I say we go with Harry. If that's where the war is, then that's where our friends will be." "I'm hoping the war is over now that the ring is destroyed," Frodo replied, "but I think so too. We need to go to where the war is, or was." Frodo offered the bag Harry had made for the ring back to the wizard. It really did help. Harry held the bag in his hand, brushing his fingers over the shimmering cloth, and smiled at Frodo. Harry handed it back to him. "I made this for you, Frodo. The ring may be destroyed, but a gift is still a gift." Frodo accepted the bag and held it to his chest with a soft smile. "Thank you, I'll treasure it always." They made it to the door before they heard the thundering horde coming their way. Harry instinctively put up his hand as the door crashed open. A protective shield had the orcs bouncing back out of the fortress and falling off the bridge into the green miasma below. Harry didn't wait for the orcs to stop coming. He figured it would take a while for them to realize their mistake in thinking the fortress was still their sanctuary. Besides, Harry was in a bit of a hurry. Instead of waiting, Harry continued walking forward, slowly, allowing the shield to clear their path for them. The hobbits followed in the wizard's wake, watching the orcs fall to their deaths. Frodo hitched his bag higher on his shoulder and kept up the pace with the others. Sam began a running commentary about the surprised expressions on the ugly orc faces, or what their last thoughts could have been before they fell into the green mist below the bridge. At the end of the bridge, or the beginning, depending which direction a person was moving. Harry stopped between the gargoyles and erected a magical ward between the two. It was only a temporary measure, but it gave Harry enough time to create something more permanent. Frodo crouched and watched the etched runes that Harry began drawing into the stone. Frodo asked, "What are you doing?" Sam canted his head to the left, trying to read the symbols. "It looks like words. Like what Lady Luna had you write." "It is," Harry agreed. "Norse writing from my world." Once he was done, Harry pushed some of his magic into it, and the runes pulsed with power. "This is like a magical door to access the bridge, and from here, the fortress. It will keep all evil out, deflect unwanted intruders, and anyone with the intent to harm the occupants of the fortress gets zapped." Harry pointed at a cave troll that had just spotted the three. "Ooh, just in time." "Watch," Harry said, and simply stood there, looking up at the troll barreling down on them. The hobbits hid behind Harry and watched as the troll bounced off the barrier. The ward zapped the troll with electricity that visibly crackled across its skin, causing it to spasm and twitch. Harry beamed at the hobbits. "Since we are the current occupants of the fortress, it is protecting us." "What happens when we leave? Who will it protect then?" Sam asked as he looked back at the huge empty fortress. "Anyone who comes to this fortress and isn't evil can enter past this magical doorway with no problem. When that happens, they'll be the ones who are protected." Harry shrugged. "It's not perfect. I'm still learning these runes. Maybe when we have more time, Luna can help me update them. The intent for now is to keep this fortress from being occupied by evil again." "What if they don't use the bridge?" Sam frowned, looking over the side of the bridge carefully. "If they can get through that green mist, I guess they deserve to have the run of the fortress." Harry shrugged. The wizard frowned and looked at his friends. "There are a lot of orcs and trolls headed this way. It's gonna take us forever to get through this." Both hobbits flinched, and Sam offered, "I'll be a bunny again." "No." Frodo blushed at the amused look on Harry's face. "I'll be the bunny this time. Sam should get to experience flying at least once." "Uh-huh," Harry said, chuckling. Sam just blinked in bemusement, then shrugged his indifference. "Okay." Harry turned Frodo into a small kitten that Sam scooped up and cooed at. Harry handed Sam Frodo's bag. Sam slipped the kitten inside, then strapped the bag across his chest. Harry pulled out his wand, casted a disillusionment charm on them, and the broom before Sam awkwardly climbed on behind Harry. Once the hobbit settled behind him, Harry took to the sky and flew over the heads of the enemy. Sam held on to Harry's waist, and soon they were nearing Osgiliath. Sam had been quiet during the trip until he finally asked, "Why doesn't Mr. Frodo like flying?" "I have no idea," Harry said honestly. "I love flying. It makes me feel so free." "Can you go faster?" Sam asked. "Oh, you bet," Harry grinned. "Hold on tight." They zoomed past Osgiliath and made their way towards the white stone city, Minas Tirith. They made good time as there was still fighting, and yet many of the enemy were also trying to run away. A green mist of motion went from one group to the next across Pelennor Field, swarming the enemy and leaving death and frightened allies behind. "Are we going to the ghosts?" Sam asked. "Yes," Harry informed him. "At the rate they're going, the battle will be over soon." "I'm surprised there's anyone left to fight," Sam stated. "Considering how many fled, I agree." Harry slowed their approach, and they hovered above the fighting until Harry found a safe place to land. As soon as they were on the ground, Harry threw up another ward, safeguarding the area they stood in. Harry prompted, "Grab Frodo. I'd rather he wasn't a kitten in this mess." Sam hobbled off the broom, scooped Kitten Frodo out of the bag, and set him on the ground. Harry reversed the spell, and Frodo stifled a yawn before he asked, "Are we there yet?" "Yes," Harry said, straddling his broom once more. "Stay here behind the wards until it is safe." Frodo blinked a few times before squinting at their surroundings. Sam stepped forward, alarm plainly written on his face. "Wait, where are you going?" "There's still fighting happening. If I can put an end to it, I will. Now stay safe." Harry kicked off and flew across Pelennor Field, ignoring the retreating armies and stopping the others from fighting, literally slowing everyone across the field until he found someone he recognized. Harry swung around and came to a stop in front of Aragorn. Hovering on his broom, Harry released his spell on the future king, and Aragorn stumbled forward, checking his swing. The man looked around at the slowed masses and asked, "What did you do?" "Oh, they're still moving, just very slowly." Harry shrugged at the bewildered look from Aragorn. "I want them to have the chance to change their mind and maybe leave instead of trying to kill each other." "Most of the enemy has retreated," Aragorn said as he looked around. "What of the hobbits?" "They're safe." Harry gestured in the direction he had left the two friends, waiting for it to be safe to leave the wards. "I set for them. What more do you need to bring this to an end?" Aragorn pointed out one of the few living elephants and suggested, "Think you can get them to go away instead of killing good men?" Harry glanced at the huge beasts and asked, "How do you know those on the elephant aren't also good men?" But he didn't wait to hear the answer and flew to the beast, or more accurately, to the man steering the beast. When Harry reached the bald man with the reins in his hands and released him from the impediment spell, the man jerked. He was in shock, or just gaped for no reason. Harry peered at the man and asked, "Do you speak Westron?" The bald man said something while gesturing wildly. Harry looked towards where he was pointing, or flailing, and drifted towards that person. Harry grabbed the arrow from in front of the man's bow so it wouldn't hit him, or anyone, really, and released him. The second man also jerked in shock, looked around, then shouted at the bald man. The two bickered back and forth, then the bowman finally turned to Harry and said, It was a start. Harry gestured to Pelennor Field, then towards Mordor. "The war is over. Sauron is destroyed. It is time for you and your people to leave. No one else needs to die." The bowman looked around Pelennor Field, then spoke to the bald man. Both men gestured wildly as they spoke. There was a lot of arm flailing going on. Then the bowman looked at Harry and he asked, "I dead?" "Sauron, the Eye, is dead. Yes." Bowman grunted, spoke, and gestured, because apparently neither man could speak without using their hands. Bald man grinned hugely, spoke, gestured, because of course he did, and then nodded at Harry, pointing towards the east. "Huh, so not back to Mordor?" Harry nodded back and asked the bowman, "Do others speak Westron?" Harry nodded towards the other two elephants. The bowman shook his head, spoke to the bald man who raised a horn. The bowman told Harry, signal, "Go home." "Leave?" "Excellent," Harry said with a grin, then went around each elephant and grabbed up a dozen or so arrows and a few spears that had been shot and thrown respectively. Then he went towards the men on the ground, looking for someone who might be in charge, and found Legolas mid-leap off a dead elephant. Harry released Legolas and smirked when the elf landed awkwardly. Legolas looked around stunned and finally spotted him. "Harry."
"The war is over," Harry announced. The bald man began blowing the retreat, and Harry released the rest of the field. "Are you okay?"
"I am," Legolas said as he watched the entire field stutter back into movement. It was rather surreal to watch the huge beasts make a turn to head east, away from the fighting. Harry felt so small compared to the massive things. Gimli's voice bellowed from behind them. "That still only counts as one." "Yes, but the fighting is over. I still win," Legolas informed the dwarf. Gimli huffed, and he frowned at Harry. "And I suppose I have you to thank for ending this too." "Two?" Harry asked as he hopped off his broom. "I'd like to think I had a hand in ending this one, but another one?" Gimli gestured to where the green mist of the ghost army flew towards Minas Tirith. "They showed up at Helm's Deep and killed the Uruk-hai that were swarming the keep. Said you sent him." "Huh, that must be what Ep3 was talking about." "The emissary?" Legolas asked. "Yes. He showed up in Ithilien, said they helped Aragorn, but the curse wasn't broken. He never said how they helped." Harry began walking towards the front gates. He could have flown, but that would have left the other two behind. And they were still conversing. Still, if they helped save lives, I'm not going to complain. Pelennor Field was quite large, and it took a while for them to make it closer to the gates. Halfway there was where the green mist of ghosts still hovered. There was a lone figure of a living being amongst the mist. Harry guessed it was Aragorn, and headed towards them. The trio picked up their pace, and the ghost broke formation, allowing them to enter the circle. As one of the ghosts dropped to a knee, All but one, their king who wore a crown upon his head, even in death, to show their fealty to the master. Harry nodded back to them, feeling awkward, but doing his best not to insult them. Ethelfrid rose immediately and spoke, "Master, I present his majesty, King Mortheth." "Master!" King Mortha raised a fist to his chest and bowed his head in respect before continuing to speak. "We have fulfilled our oath. The future king of Gondor has just released us." Harry smiled at the ghosts and nodded. "Then it is time you were at peace." Each of the ghostly warriors saluted the Master of Death before allowing themselves to cross to the peaceful end they had been longing for. Harry, for his part, stood patiently as they moved in large squads. There was a massive number of ghosts, and Harry refused to move until they were all honored. King Mortha was the last to go. He looked at Harry and gave him a ghastly grin. "Thank you, Master. You honored my men. I am forever grateful." "Be at peace," Harry said once more and sighed contentedly when he was gone. "Sending them on is the best part of the job. They're usually quite relieved to go." "You did a good thing, Harry." Aragorn gestured, and the group continued on towards the front gate. Their aid was quite helpful. They saved a lot of lives. Here, Helm's Deep, and the boats. "Boats?" Harry asked. "You three seem to have gone on one hell of an adventure." "Harry?" Frodo and Sam's voices came from within the ward. Legolas, Gimli, and Aragorn were looking around for them, and Harry gestured for the two to come over. The two hobbits ran toward them, laughing at the surprise on their faces. When they were all together again, Harry shook his head in amusement. "I told you to stay until it was safe. You could have come out any time." "Frodo wasn't sure when you would think it's safe enough for us," Sam groused. "You didn't know either," Frodo countered. Harry just chuckled and watched as white tents began popping up. Frodo and Sam looked expectantly at Harry, and the wizard chuckled. "Did you want something?" "Well," Sam shrugged. "You have us spoiled, Harry. How could a regular tent ever compare to yours?" Laughing, Harry pulled his tent from the red beaded bag. Gimli frowned at the bag. Legolas peered at it, and Harry handed it to the elf before he erected the tent. "It's a tent." When the elf's words trailed off, Harry grinned in resignation and prompted, "Go ahead, say it." Burly Gimli said, quite forcefully,
"That it is. And for good reason."
Harry nodded in acquiescence. "It belongs to one of my best friends. Her name is Hermione Granger. She was quite young when she performed this tricky bit of magic. Hermione made the bag nearly bottomless, extending the inside in order to fit all of our belongings without making it weigh more than a few ounces. Before I came here to Middle-earth, she gave it to me because it contained everything we took with us during our war against a Dark Lord." "Is that what you did to Sam's pack?" Gimli asked, while Legos looked more closely at the old red beaded bag. "Exactly," Harry agreed. "Magic here is much easier for me. It flows through everything, making it simpler to manipulate." The wizard took the bag back and dropped it into his pocket. A loud cry of Gandalf caught his attention. Frodo and Sam were grinning up at an old man wearing all white with long white hair and beard, leaning on a staff. Harry had a half grin at the thought that he didn't look much like Dumbledore. Frodo, Sam, it does this old man's heart good to see you two looking so well." Gandalf peered over to Harry with a small grin buried in his beard, but his eyes were twinkling merrily. So, perhaps, a bit like Dumbledore. Gandalf asked, "Are you who I'm to thank for taking such good care of my friends?" "I suppose so." "I'm Harry," he answered, and reached out his hand for the old man to shake, which he did. "Well, meet Harry," Gandalf said with a sincere smile. Pippin showed up right about then from seemingly nowhere to ask, "Has anyone seen Merry?" Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas all looked surprised. Aragorn told Pippin, "We left him in Dunharrow with King Theoden and the Rohirrim. He was to return to Edoras with Elwyn and the women." Pippin deflated. "Cheer up, Pip," Frodo said. "At least he'll be safer there than in this battle." "Frodo?" Pippin's face brightens. Frodo chuckles as the two hug. Harry felt his mirror vibrate and pulled it out immediately. "None of Gondor," Luna answered back. "Good news. The injured elves from Helm's Deep arrived safely. The rest, apparently, went to Gondor." Harry looked around with a frown. "I haven't seen them yet, but I just got here not too long ago." Legolas appeared beside him, and he smiled at his beloved. Luna swooned. Legolas, "Hello, love. They came from the west with the Rawum. When we find them, we can give you another call." Harry gave up the mirror, and Legolas wandered off for privacy. Harry watched everyone talking animatedly with each other, over each other, and decided he was ready for a nap. He walked into his tent and flopped onto his couch. Harry had just kicked his feet up on the coffee table when the rest of the Fellowship, sans Merry, made their way inside. Everyone, with the exception of Frodo and Sam, were astounded at the sheer size of the inside and began exploring. Legolas stopped and handed back the mirror. "Thank you, Harry." Harry said and stifled a yawn. Harry stretched and yawned. It wasn't a long nap, but it was much needed. He still felt exhausted, yet his mind was less foggy and muddled. Harry wasn't sure what time it was, but he woke to a familiar sight. Sam was cooking again, and Frodo was setting the table. Harry pushed up off the couch and asked Frodo, "Is there enough seating for everyone?" Frodo looked around the table and did a hand wiggle to signify or something of the sort. "We should be okay," Frodo hedged. "Aragorn is at the healing tent helping out, but even if he comes back, we're okay." "What's wrong?" Harry asked as he moved closer. He looked around the room at the stoic Fellowship and frowned with concern. "It's just not the same without Merry," Pippin said. "Have all of the injured made it in yet? Luna helped me learn more healing spells." Harry rubbed his face, trying to wake up quicker. "Pelinderfield is quite large," Gandalf said. "We are uncertain if all of the injured have been found. Unfortunately, it has grown dark and more treacherous to be out on the battlefield to search for survivors. It has been decided that we will have to wait until the sun rises once more to continue." "Luna said something about Lorien guards coming. Their eyesight is superior to any humans," Harry prompted. Legolas flailed, then pointed at Harry as he exclaimed to Gandalf, "I told you we would be fine and you argued that it wouldn't be safe. Gandalf, we just survived a war. I imagine guard duty and searching for survivors will be significantly safer than what we've already encountered." "Now I feel bad for taking a nap." Harry sighed. "I can help. I know a spell that will show any living beings in the area, making finding the survivors much easier. Once I find someone, I will make magical flames that won't spread, but can brighten the surroundings." "What about wargs, wild beasts, and scavengers that come for a feast?" "All the more reason to find the living and get them out of there," Harry said and walked towards the tent flap, food and relaxing put to the back of his mind. "Harry," Sam called, and the young wizard stopped to look at the hobbit, who was making his way forward. "What?" "It's not a home-cooked meal," Sam said in apology as he handed Harry a lembas bread. "But you haven't eaten in hours either." Harry smiled at Sam, accepting the lembas. "Thanks, Sam." He pulled out his broom as he stepped out of his tent and took to the air. A quick home-run reveille had a number of spots, light up in the dark field, and Harry went on a search for survivors. Harry frowned at his sister in concern when she called again, the next day, via the magical mirrors. "Is everything okay?" "Yes." Luna hesitated before admitting, "When we were on Earth, I was involved. I was there with you, with Ginny, with Neville. Now..." Luna sighed softly. "And now I feel useless, stuck here at home, like a scolded child. It's just frustrating. The fighting is over. Would you like to come here and help?" When Luna's eyes widened, Harry grinned. He stepped out of his tent. "We found all the survivors we could last night. There were a lot of people. I helped heal the wounded we found, thanks to your help learning spells. But there are others within the city. They'd appreciate healing potions. I ran out." "I can brew," Luna said in wonder. "Yes, you can," Harry agreed. "You're quite talented, and I can use your help." Trolls broke down the front gate of Minas Tirith, allowing orcs to attack inside the city walls. I haven't a clue how many are sick or injured in there. Sam is a gardener by trade, so I imagine he's familiar with all sorts of plant life. I'm gonna ask if he can help gather ingredients. Luna was beaming. "Will you come get me?" "Of course," Harry said easily. "Just be sure to tell Naineth before I get there. I will not take the blame for your mischief this time." Harry stepped into the main healing tent as Luna ended the call, slipping the mirror into a pocket. Madame Erath was stepping forward. "Ah, Harry, earlier you spoke of potions." "Yes, Madame Erath." "I brought what I have," Harry said, handing over a vial. He walked over to a crate that served as a table and began unloading the few he had left. Well, few... Harry still had 12. These are blood-replenishing potions. They're labeled for your convenience, also with their expiration dates. Just like the healing potions I gave out last night, they taste awful, but work wonderfully. Madame Erath smiled at Harry's description and held the vial to the light. "Fascinating things. Thank you, young man. I'll have help later to make more healing potions. I've asked my sister for her help." Your sister is talented with magic as well. Madame Yareth looked surprised. I never knew there were female wizards. I've only ever heard of a few old men. Ah, no. Luna isn't a witch. Harry left off the teeny more and shrugged. She is good at brewing, though. Anyhow, I'm off, unless you need me for something first. Madame Yareth looked over at Mary and Awen with pursed lips. There's nothing for now. You should get more rest. Yes, ma'am, Harry said, and ducked out of the tent, knowing he didn't have time to rest yet. Harry made his way to the pavilion next door. Inside were the other 3 hobbits, Legolas and Gimli, along with various others that he didn't recognize. Harry walked into the tent and called over to Sam. Samwise, the brave, your brilliance in herbology is needed. My brilliance in what? Sam asked. Samwise the brave, asked Pippin at the same time. Sam visibly cringed when Pippin started grinning widely. The hobbit appeared to be bracing himself for some fun teasing from his longtime friend. Frodo gave Pippin a warning look. Sam is very brave, and I relied on him quite a bit during our journey across Middle-earth. You would do well to remember that. Peregrine took before you say another word. Pippin attempted an innocent look, but it didn't fool anyone. Harry ignored the other hobbits and focused on Sam. The wizard motioned him over, saying, "Your knowledge of plants is what I am referring to." Hearing this, Sam perked up. Plants? I can help there? Legolas came over and asked, "Is there anything I can help with?" There are a lot of injured people, so I'm going to ask Luna to make potions. Harry ticked on his fingers, healing, blood replenishing, and pain relief. Harry exited the pavilion, followed by Sam and Legolas. I have a list of plants that she will need in order to make them. In some cases, it will be either the blooms or roots, so uprooting the entire plant is probably best. If you need help, get Pip and Frodo involved. Is this for Mary? Sam asked as he followed Harry into his tent. Sam and Legolas followed Harry inside before the wizard finally responded, "Yes and no. At least half of the Athelas are for Aragorn. This darkness that is spreading in Mary and Eowyn is something that Aragorn seemed to recognize." "We call Athelas King's Foil," Sam explained. Harry nodded and made a copy of the list of ingredients he needed, handing one to Legolas, the other to Sam. "That's what worries me," Harry said. "I only learned the elven names of these plants, so that's what you'll see on the lists." "Not to worry, Harry," Legolas assured him. "I can help translate what Sam doesn't recognize." "Perfect, thank you, both of you." "I'll start with the King's Foil for Aragorn," Sam declared as he practically ran from the tent. Legolas chuckled and with a wave went after the eager hobbit. "We will get you what you need." Harry grinned when the pair left. With a few quick safety wards around his bedroom, Harry felt secure enough to pop back to Lothlorien. He had a promise to keep. Luna left to bring the completed potions and salves to the healer's tent, which translated to Luna had Legolas carry the box of potions so she could visit with Mary. Harry stayed behind in his tent to clean the cauldrons. They were taking a respite while they waited for Sam and his volunteers to bring more ingredients. There was a bit of a commotion happening outside the tent, and soon familiar voices could be heard shouting, "Nethermach." Harry smiled and walked out of the tent in time to see the troublesome duo swing Luna around joyously. It was great to see Elladan and Elro. Harry hadn't known them for long, but it did his heart good to see the pair were safe. A thought came to the wizard and he spoke to them. "I am pleased to see you are both alive and well." Elladan and Elro here turned at the sound of his voice and exclaimed, "Hanana." Harry laughed as the twins greeted him as well, and he asked them, "Have you reported in with your grandmother?" That brought the two up short, and they glanced at each other before looking back to Harry. Luna covered her mouth and hid her amusement. Elroshir spoke slowly as if to a thick-headed child. "The war just ended. We have been here helping. We have not had a chance to go to Lothlorien and back again." Harry snorted. Luna giggled. Legolas smirked. Harry then pulled his two-way mirror out and spoke to it. "Nineth, I Armel 11. Elrohir cried out, and Elladan nearly tore the mirror from Harry's hands when they heard their grandmother's voice from the mirror, and the two elves pressed their heads together to see her. Their smiles were huge, and their conversation moved too swiftly for Harry to follow. Not only were the twins speaking over each other, Luna chimed in with her commentary. Galadriel's laughter could be heard through the mirror, while Celeborn could be heard lecturing one or all of them. Harry was soon distracted with the return of the hobbits. Sam with a basket of plants, Pippin carried a box, and Frodo had blooms. Harry waved them into the tent to finish preparing to make another batch of potions. These are perfect. Set them on the workbench. Pippin held a jar of beetles and asked, "What do you need these for, Harry?" Harry hedged. No, Sam denied. Well, Harry started and Sam groaned. Pippin looked confused and Frodo laughed. "I think I missed something." "Yes, Pip, you did," Frodo agreed, still laughing. "The carapaces are used for antidotes," Harry corrected. "I didn't give you one, so no, you didn't drink any bugs." Pippin nearly dropped the jar of beetles as he finally understood. "Ugh," Pippin said with a grimace. "Really?" "Yes, really," Harry laughed. "Tell me, would you drink something that's been made with bug parts in order not to die of poison?" Maybe Pippin hedged and the other hobbits wrinkled their noses as well. Harry shrugged, moved to the kitchen to wash the cauldron, and was soon back to separating the ingredients for the next batch of potions as the three hobbits made their exit. "Hanada!" a twin called out. Harry asked. Harry's hands kept chopping, mincing, and preparing ingredients, and he hadn't bothered to look up to see who had entered. With a flick of his wand, the fire beneath the cauldron sparked to life. With a tap, he had water flowing lightly until there was 2 inches within and left it to simmer. When he didn't receive a response, Harry finally looked up from what he was doing and was surprised to see both Aladon and Elro watching him in amusement. Elro motioned with the mirror before setting it down on the table. "Thank you for allowing us use of your magical mirror." Aladon agreed. "It's nice to speak with the grandparents without having to travel. Very convenient." "No problem. Yennefer enjoys using the mirror. I thought she would be pleased to see you too." Polano Field was quite extensive. Mercifully, the area around what was quickly becoming a tent village had been cleared of all dead, injured, weapons, and debris. Well, anything detrimental to the health of the occupants. Fortunate enough to not be among the dead, yet not fortunate enough to be able to go home, providing there was a home for them to go back to. Then there was the rather heavily guarded tent that Harry stepped out of and stretched the kinks from his neck and back as best as he could. The guards watched him silently. They were always watching him. Harry wasn't quite sure what they expected from him or of him. Then again, Harry was the first one to agree to help heal the enemy. That's not saying Polano Field was cleared of the after effects of the war. Far from it. Harry walked to the perimeter of the growing tent village and wrinkled his nose. Perhaps a meter, possibly less, away from where he stood, lay the rotting bodies of beasts, slain during the battle. Horses, Oliphants, wargs, and, if Harry's memory served him, a headless hellhawk, large hunks of masonry, discarded forgotten weapons, bows, arrows, swords, pikes, trebuchets, some broken and caked with dried blood. It's going to take years, maybe decades, before these fields are safe enough to farm again. Harry looked at Aragorn and asked, "What do you think needs to be done?" "Remaining broken weapons will be a danger to the farmers and any field animals. The debris of war needs to be taken away. Burn the remains." Aragorn shrugged. "Even then, I don't know if that will be enough, but it would be a start. I may not have time to do the entire field, it's rather extensive. But I can at least help with the area between here and, I don't know, maybe Osgiliath? That's a large area," Aragorn commented with raised, surprised eyebrows. "Can you really do that?" "I don't see why not," Harry shrugged. "Not sure how purified I can make the ground, but some help has to be better than none." "It would be a huge help, Harry." Aragorn pursed his lips and furrowed his eyebrows. He looked like a man with something pressing on his mind. Harry asked, "Is something wrong?" Aragorn blinked and shook his head. "Sorry, just thinking." "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," Aragorn prompted. "What's wrong with Merry?" "I noticed he isn't waking." Harry sighed as his words dropped off. "I only know enough magic to help the wounded, but the infirmed... It's the Black Breath, or Black Shadow, a weapon used by the Nazgul. It's an evil blight that causes their victims to slip into a dark, cold sleep and never recover. Both Merry and Eowyn are inflicted. The Athalas brought by Sam was helpful, but they have not yet woken." Aragorn sighed heavily. "It's what has been weighing on my mind. There's a spell that might help." Harry and Aragorn turned around in surprise at the new voice. Luna reminded Harry, "Try the Patronus charm, Harry. The Black Breath is a darkness on the mind and soul. And a Patronus is fueled by positive feelings and brings warmth to the most cold and dire circumstances," Harry added with a nod. "It can't hurt." The three walked into the healing tent where both Eowyn and Merry were lying. Harry hesitated. Luna rubbed his forearm, and Harry smiled at his sister before he whispered, "Expecto Patronum." The reaction from the occupants in the tent was immediate. There were gasps of shock and surprise, and a giggle of glee. Merry murmured softly in his sleep, with a soft smile on his face. Owen sighed, content, the furrow in her brow eased and smoothed. Madame Irith, followed by Gandalf, came into the tent and stopped at the sight of the brilliantly shining stag nuzzling Mary's hand. Gandalf made his way over while Madame Irith seemingly took the odd sight in stride before making her way to other patients. Gandalf reached out hesitantly and looked over at Harry, who nodded in confirmation. It was only then that Gandalf dared touch the stag. Prongs turned his attention to the old wizard, only briefly before giving his attention back to Mary, the one who needed him most. Gandalf's smile reached his eyes, and he once again looked at Harry. Magnificent. "Thank you," Harry said, because he wasn't sure what else he was expected to say. Luna stepped closer to Prongs and Gandalf, explaining what a Patronus was and what she had hoped would happen with Prong's aid. Harry told Aragorn, "We'll be leaving soon, back to Lothlorien. The guards wish to go back to the woods, and Luna and I will be joining them." Usually a Patronus is used to drive something evil away, so I have no idea how long Prongs will last. I'm happy to have him stick around as long as he's needed, and as long as he can be, but Harry shrugged. I have no idea when that will end. Prongs? That's the name of my Patronus, Harry said with a soft smile. Lupin, one of the professors at school, named him after my father. Harry's words tapered off, and his smile dimmed, warping to a look of horror. Oh no. Harry, Luna was at his side immediately, clutching his arm. What's wrong? There were tears in his eyes when he looked at Luna, and Harry managed only one word, Teddy, before he was gasping due to a panic attack, overwhelmed with guilt. Harry started working the next morning. He walked out of the protected camp area and began walking. He wasn't in a hurry to get anywhere specific and found it was easier to clear a path rather than to pick his way around the fallen. The only things Harry hadn't banished besides the dead were the large chunks of masonry. According to Pippin, they had been hurled at the enemy from the city proper and probably belonged to the broken parts of Minas Tirith. If that was indeed the case, Harry wanted to leave them available to possibly fix the White City. Instead, Harry opted to move each of the large stones to a designated area where he did his best to clean each one. They smelled like rot and decay. Considering what was found under the large masonry, that wasn't surprising. Harry walked through the ruined grounds, gathering the dead bodies and parts for disposal. Some of the beasts were too difficult for humans to move without magic. It was evident that an attempt had been made to dispose of the bodies since one of the Oliphants had large chunks of its torso missing. Harry didn't bother trying to move them either and simply burned them where they lay. While there were human remains, Easterlings, not men from Gondor or Rohan, the majority were orcs, trolls, or Uruk-hai. Harry didn't bother distinguishing between the species and gathered all that he saw. Once a mound was as tall as he was, the young wizard would set it on fire, putting up a shield around it, not just to protect the senses, but to keep the flames from spreading. Once the flames had burned themselves out, Harry would go back to that mound, lower the shield, and bury what was left before repeating the process. There were up to 3 mounds burning at a time. His routine had gone on for hours with no interruptions. His mind was numb and he moved by instinct. Anytime Harry thought of that little baby boy that he had yet to meet came to mind, he had to stop moving and close his eyes, mentally sending an apology into the ether to his godson. When the burning guilt subsided, Harry would recast his patroness and send him back to Mary and Erwan, then start his routine once more. You are overly ambitious if your intent is to clear this entire field. Harry stilled in surprise and took a calming breath before responding, I'm only keeping busy until it's time to go back to Lothlorien. These people may starve if they have no field to farm. Harry glanced at his friend. Should you be out here? Oloyan shrugged, unconcerned. Perhaps not, but I grew bored listening to them argue over the Easterlings' fate. I did not heal them for them to be killed, Harry winced. Yet their fate is not up to you, Olayan reminded him. This is for the men of Gondor to decide, as it is on their people they ward. Maybe not, Harry agreed, sort of, with a huff, but I helped bring an end to this war. I was the one that got the enemy to turn away and stop fighting. It bothers me that they do not care what I have to say. They say I'm too young to understand. This is the second war I've fought in. I've been fighting for most of my life. His words cut off when he realized he was so annoyed that he slipped back into English. Harry closed his eyes. Sorry. Harry looked at a lion. I should not raise my voice at you when it is not you. I am angry with. They are male, Luna reminded the two. A lion, and Harry turned to look at her. They do not wish to be reminded that they are not all-knowing. They use your age to dismiss your opinion. The fact they are human simply makes matters worse. Male men are stubborn and argumentative. Not all men, Harry argued, causing Luna to giggle. Ludian smirked. I believe you just proved your sister's point. Harry snorted. I want to be offended, but you are not wrong. Someone cleared their throat, and the trio turned to see a familiar face. The older man smiled at Harry and held out his hand. Harry, Faramir, Harry greeted and shook Faramir's hand. I'm pleased to see you among the living. Have you met my sister, Lady Lenovely, Maiden of Lothlorien, and Alien of the Lorien Guards? I have not had the pleasure to officially meet them. Faramir gave a sketch of a bow and introduced himself. I am Faramir, Steward of Gondor. Luna and Aleon greeted back. Harry commented, Steward of Gondor. Ah, for the moment. Thankfully, it is only until the king's coronation, Faramir explained. Did you need to speak to my brother alone? Luna asked. Not necessarily, Faramir said before he gestured to the work Harry had been doing. Thank you for your efforts to save our farmland. Faramir gestured again, vaguely behind him. Farmers are wondering when you think they can work the land again. Now! Harry shrugged. I know nothing about farming. Faramir smiled. Thank you, Harry. They were more concerned with being in your way. I'll let them know. They could have just asked me. You're an unknown young wizard displaying more magic than any have seen in a lifetime. Faramir chuckled at the bewildered look on Harry's face. They appreciate what you're doing, they don't want to upset you, and risk making you stop. Harry snorted in amusement and glanced towards the large stone city. Well, I'm only here until the morning, then I'll be back for the coronation. I will do my best to finish what I can. Will you be leaving your tent while you're gone? You're coming back, so it's not as if you can't get it then. I promise not to make a mess of things. Harry looked at the hopeful hobbits and chuckled. Sure, I can leave the tent up. Try not to burn the thing down. When Pippin looked absolutely pleased, Harry quickly added, I'm warding my room. You'll have the rest of the tent to lounge around in. Pippin managed to look offended when he crossed his arms with a huff. I'm not that bad. I don't know, Pip, Frodo said. Remember Gandalf's fireworks? Stealing from Farmer Maggot, Sam added. Which time? Frodo asked with a small grin. Or those mushrooms on the side of the road. Sam shuddered at that memory. The well in Moria, Frodo prompted. His voice sounded oddly hollow. Don't forget about the Palantir and Adoris, added Gimli. Wait, what's a Palantir? Sam asked. Nothing important, Pippin interrupted. Arms flailing. Any more? Suddenly I'm worried for the tent's survival. Ha! Pippin said, deadpanned. Then rolled his eyes and pouted. Anana, Ilúdan said, trying to get Harry's attention back to the discussion that had been going on. Harry sighed. We're leaving in the morning. Sure, Harry shrugged indifferently. Harry, I'll try to make the wizard understand. It's a long journey. It's over 450 miles from Pelennor Fields to Lothlorien. Going by horseback is faster than walking. Yes, Harry agreed. I'm sure it is, but I didn't intend on walking either. You can't fly off without us, I encountered, or that popping thing you do. Luna giggled when Harry groaned and reminded him, there's still port keys, Harry. True, but I've never made one before. Then aren't you lucky you have a sister that studied many forms of magic while you were traipsing around Middle-earth? I am, Harry agreed. And that includes port keys? Yes, it does, Luna said. Great, Harry said with a huge grin. I hate port keys, but it beats riding a horse. Elrohir hedged. Should I even ask what a port key is? Luna grinned. Well, and you're sure this is safe? Define safe. Not helping Harry, Luna reprimanded, though humor laced her words. Harry shrugged, grinning, utterly unapologetic, and gave a different and just as unhelpful response. It will get you to your destination quickly. In one piece? Yes, Luna said, finally answering a question, though still not easing their trepidation, and holding out the rope. As long as you are touching the portkey when the spell is cast, you'll be in Lothlorien within minutes. Luna bit her lip in thought before she went on to explain. You'll feel something like a hook behind your navel pulling you when the spell activates. You will then feel as if you were thrown into a gale of wind. Do not let go prematurely. At the end of the trip, you land at your predetermined destination. The trick to keeping your feet upon landing is to release the portkey on the downward spiral, then move your legs as if you're walking, and the motion will bring you down safely. The Lorien guards exchanged concerned looks. None of them appeared willing to touch the rope in Luna's hand. Harry snickered and stepped forward. We are leaving in 2 minutes. Anyone not touching the portkey at that time will be left behind. Harry looked pointedly at the twins. I will leave it to those left behind to explain to Ned why they failed to make it back in a timely fashion. Luna's lips twitched, but she didn't smile when she wriggled the rope. Harry took the other end, extending it for the ease of the other travelers to reach, and waited for the twins and guards to touch the line. 1 minute, Harry warned. Counting down, Luna prompted, and they finally reached out and touched the length of rope. As soon as they were all in contact with the rope, Harry didn't wait another moment and casted Portus. Iandeg, Galadriel pulled her laughing, adopted son into her embrace. Once she released her hold on her daughter and held him tightly, the guards and twins were still slowly gaining their feet after their rough landing from the portkey ride. Luna asked, "Where's father?" Angrenost, a missive was received from the new steward of Gondor shortly after you left. The Onodrim were to keep the fallen White Wizard holed up in his tower-turned-prison, but he has not been seen nor heard from since the war ended. The steward requested someone check on Saruman since they have so many still recovering. Galadriel hugged Eladon and Elrohir as she continued speaking to Luna. You know how restless your father was when the guards left for Helm's Deep, even more so when only half returned and the others marched to Gondor. Imagine his yearning to do something when you went off to Gondor to help with the patients. So I sent him out of the woods to take on this task. Harry grinned at the mental image. Luna nodded, most likely understanding Celeborn's unease. Eladon asked, "How long has he been gone?" "A few days." Galadriel brushed off any concern. "Celeborn will be back soon. Are you leaving already? He will be sorry to have missed seeing you both." "Would you like us to go to Angrenost?" Elrohir offered. "Not yet. We feast first." Galadriel squeezed her grandson's hand. "While the world will always be a dangerous place, the war is over. Do not be so quick to leave me that I feel slighted." As soon as the twins and guards walked away, Harry spoke. "Nineth," Galadriel asked, "what is it?" "The prophecy, the one that brought me here." Harry bit his lip before plunging on. "It is not finished. There is something more that needs to be done." "How can that be?" Galadriel stated, "The ring was destroyed. Sauron is gone. What is left?" She paused and asked, "And how can you be certain that it is not yet fulfilled?" "It is not something I can describe easily. There is a pull, a need to go, a need to help, fix, do something." Harry shrugged feebly. "I thought it was just this Master of Death thing, but it is more than that. There is something more going on. When the one calls, the light will be brought forth and guide him, destroying that which cannot be destroyed. Through the light, the darkness will fall and bring an end. To the War of Wars, Luna recited the prophecy. The first half speaks of you as the Master of Death, so it must be the second half that continues to call on you. Luna prompted, through the light, the darkness will fall and bring an end. To the War of Wars, it may very well be. Galadriel frowned and asked Harry, "So what more do you have to do?" "I wish I knew," Harry admitted. "It is just a nagging feeling that my task is not completed. The urgency is not there anymore, but the drive has not left me." "Well then," Galadriel said with a nod, "I will look into the mirror and see what it will share." Galadriel made it quite clear that no one was to go to Isengard to look for Celeborn. It was too soon to worry about his return. He was due back in a day's time, so Harry volunteered for guard duty with the stipulation that he'd be assigned to the west side of the border facing Fingorn. It was still dark when Elaine gestured towards the other forest. Celeborn and his party were spotted making their way back from Isengard. The sun was not expected to rise for another few hours. Elaine asked, "Did you know they were coming now? Is that why you asked to guard on this border?" "No," Harry admitted. "Mother said soon, and I have been feeling restless. So either way, I would have been out here. You did not have to stand with me. You are right, I did not have to. Harry looked at his friend, but the Leyen didn't speak again until the travelers were getting closer. Go, greet your father. I am sure he will be pleased to see you alive and healthy. The young wizard waited until his father and his group were drawing nearer and walked out slowly from the trees, bow stowed, hands, palms forward, held down at his sides. Harry stood still and waited to be recognized. He knew it was only a matter of time, moments really, since Aelion could already recognize those approaching. Harry! Celeborn's face lit up and his smile beamed upon seeing his son again for the first time since Harry left for war. Well met. What brings you here? The wizard quickly made his way to his father, where Celeborn pulled Harry into an embrace. Harry smiled at Celeborn. I am on guard duty and am too happy to see you again, but I chose not to wait until you reached us. His father laughed heartily and slapped his son on the back. You were checking up on me. I am not that old and feeble, young whelp. I can still manage to look in on an unarmed wizard. Celeborn looked back in the direction they had just traveled before continuing. Besides, the old man wasn't there. Angrenost is deserted. Not even the Unodrim are there any longer. Harry looked in the same direction his father had. Should we be concerned? Celeborn urged Harry to walk alongside him as the entire troop began walking once more. I have sent scouts to pick up the traitor's trail and a messenger to Gondor to report to the human steward. In the meantime, we will go back home. Harry walked back to the trees with Celeborn but stayed on guard duty watching his father and the other guards walk to Caryscaladon. He sighed softly when the nod of concern remained. The two scouts that Celeborn had sent after Saruman had split up after the second day of their search, yet returned to Lothlorien together on the fourth day. Harry stood in the back of the room, silently listening as they reported their findings to their lord and lady. The room was of average size, brightly lit with a rectangular table in the center. Galadriel sat in one chair, Celeborn in the other, bookending the couple where Eladon and Elrohir were on their left, while Luna sat to their right. The traitorous white wizard had somehow disappeared, and the scouts were left confused. They didn't know Saruman's whereabouts, nor his destination, and what's more, they simply couldn't comprehend the need or urgency of his recapture. The first scout frowned. My lord, surely an old unarmed wizard cannot cause any mischief or harm. Harry was looking out the window and wondered just how harmless Saruman truly was. The man apparently could still cast magic, mind magic. If Harry was correct in his assumption, the young wizard felt the gaze upon him and refocused on the occupants within the room. Luna was looking at Harry and the young man gave a small nod of agreement at the concern in his sister's eyes. A messenger rushed in and stopped short when all heads turned towards him, all sans the two scouts that stared at the wall before them, waiting for their next instructions. The brunette elf bowed to the couple before he dared speak. My lord and lady, Lord Elrond and Lady Arwen, are traveling to Minas Tirith. The messenger pursed his lips before he pressed on. They wish to stop in Caryscaladon. At this point, the messenger glanced at Elaton and Elro. They wish to pay their respects to the fallen. Eladon and Elrohir showed no reaction to what was said. The elf didn't move or speak. Harry watched from his vantage point as Galadriel silently peered at the brunette. Celeborn's mouth tightened before he dismissed his scouts. The room remained silent until the door closed behind them. Celeborn then looked at the messenger and gave him a nod. And so it shall be. We await their arrival with anticipation and elation. Celeborn's words felt formal and practiced. They rang hollow, empty of any sincerity. Everyone in the room remained silent, as if challenging the messenger to say anything more. The brunette was wise enough to keep any thoughts to himself and simply bowed at his obvious dismissal and left the room. The moment they were alone, Celeborn asked, What fallen is he speaking of? I thought you said everyone made it back and would heal. Eladon exchanged a look with Elrohir, and the twins shrugged in unison. Elrohir told them, That is the report that we sent to father. Luna shook her head, which makes that declaration even more confusing. Harry asked, Do you think Saruman had anything to do with the miscommunication? In what way could he have? I thought the man lost his magic. Eladon frowned in confusion. The two scouts, Harry said matter-of-factly, Their sudden confusion about the importance of finding the harmless, unarmed old man reeks of mind magic. Both Luna and Celeborn nodded their agreement with Harry's speculation. Celeborn told them, sowing discord and misinformation is a known tactic, but to what end remains to be seen. What does Saruman gain from doing so?
I know what my task is. I need to find Saruman. All eyes were on Harry when he stated, I need to find the traitor and end him. Saruman can still weave magic, which still makes him a danger to the tentative peace in Middle-earth.
Galadriel waved a dismissive hand. But first, we have company coming and 2 weddings to prepare for. Nearly a week had passed since the messenger came with the news of Elrond and Arwen's impending arrival. Harry had returned to his guard duties with Aladdin to keep his mind off hunting for the last Dark Lord. More scouts were sent in search of Saruman, but had yet to return. Aladdin gestured towards the misty mountains, and Harry closed his eyes to cast his senses. There was a small group moving in their direction. They didn't appear to be in a hurry. The wizard kept his tone quiet when he asked, Enladra's firstborn? Yes, replied Aladdin just as softly. When will they arrive? At their current pace, I estimate 3 hours, Aladdin responded. He looked at Harry with curiosity when he saw movement, and the wizard explained, My family has been waiting, and this news will give them time to prepare for their arrival. Harry closed his eyes again and filled his heart with the love of his family and friends. Expecto Patronum. Aladdin reached out to touch the shimmering Patronus. The guard smiled at the beast. As the stag nudged the elf's hand gently, Aladdin rubbed Prong's snout. He is beautiful. Travelers' estimated arrival 3 hours, Harry said to Prongs, and directed him to tell Galadriel. Harry and Aladdin remained at their post, watching the passage. The visitors' approach was a slow, steady pace in a single-file line. Some were riding on horseback, while others walked. They didn't appear to be followed by any enemies. It wasn't until they were nearing the edge of the forest that the guests from Imladris came to a stop. Aladdin, as the lead guard on duty, made a gesture, and the 8 guards dropped from their various perches to greet the new arrivals. Each guard respectfully saluted Lord Elrond and his daughter with a closed fist pressed to their chest. Aladdin stepped forward. It is an honor to receive you. My lady and lord are expecting you. There were 8 firstborns in total, 3 riding, 5 walking. Arwen was the only female of the group and rode her horse confidently. Harry watched in silence as they moved past him. Only those riding horses ignored him. The 5 walking guards each took notice of the human wizard among the Lorraine guards. Much like when the Fellowship arrived months earlier, it was evening by the time the group had made it to the center of Curus Galifon and the base of the main Mauler. Surprisingly, Celeborn, Galadriel, and Luna were alone. They were not joined by Elrohir and Eladan. As the group came to a halt, Aladdin raised his fist to his chest and gave a deep bow of his head. While the courtesies were performed, Harry slowly strolled forward to join his family. The wizard stopped in surprise when Arwen leapt from her horse and rushed forward crying out, Aermal. Galadriel opened her arms and all thoughts of propriety came to a halt as she embraced her sobbing granddaughter. Everyone watched silently as Luna crossed over and included her embrace with her mother's, but when Harry went to move, once more one of the riders swiftly leapt off his horse to counter Harry's movements by pulling a dagger to stop his approach. The wizard was not physically hurt by the gesture. Harry found the elf's reaction curious. The young wizard lowered his hood and stared the elf in the eyes before speaking softly. I am assuming that you moved to protect the Lady Arwen. Since you do not know me, I will not take offense at your action. Lower your dagger so introductions can be made. Harry's eyes narrowed and hardened as the or else was left unsaid. The golden-haired elf snorted in derision. Make introductions? I should care what a dead human's name is. Glorfindel, said Celeborn in a cautioning voice. Harry didn't take his gaze away from the man before him when he gave a minuscule shake of his head to curb any actions from any others. The movement was not lost to Glorfindel, and he smirked at the wizard. The infant believes he is man enough to stand against me. I am Glorfindel, Lord of the House of the Golden Flower. I have fought fiercer foes than you. That may be. Harry relented, but I am not dead yet, nor will I be in the foreseeable future. When Glorfindel didn't look impressed, the wizard continued. I am Harry, If you want titles, I am Lord to the House of Potter, and to the noble and most ancient House of Black. I am honored to be called son by Lady Galadriel and Lord Celeborn. Harry then grew tired of the unwavering dagger pointed at his heart and raised his hand to cast a solid glowing magical shield that forced Glorfindel to take a step backwards. Glorfindel frowned and Harry continued speaking, but chose to switch to his native tongue to bring his message home. I am a wizard of Earth, brought to Middle-earth to fulfill a prophecy. Only because you are a guest in my parents' home do I hesitate to dispatch you and spill your blood. Lower your weapon and step aside. Glorfindel scoffed and replied in Westron to mock the team. You expect me to believe that you are the Wizard of Prophecy? Luna sighed and told Harry, just turn him into a ferret and be done with it. For the first time since the visitor's arrival, Harry relaxed and smirked. Aladon and Elrohir appeared about that time from behind them and began laughing, causing all of the Imladris elves to turn in surprise. Aladon asked, Ferret? You can turn an elf into a ferret? Which was closely followed with Elrohir reprimanding Harry, Honana, have you been holding out on us? The last mounted elf slid gracefully from his mount and practically flew at his sons. Elro, you live! How is it that you live? The reports. Aladdin asked, is that the misinformation you heard? That makes no sense. Your messenger saw us both when he told of your impending arrival. Arwen soon joined the hugging, and during it all, Glorfindel hadn't moved. The wizard was watching Glorfindel the entire time and was pleased to see a flicker of emotion in the elf's eyes, even if it hadn't lasted more than a mere moment. During the standoff, not one guard moved to defend either of the two males. Elrond finally told his longtime friend, the infant is a man, young perhaps, but a man and a wizard. He speaks the truth. He is a warrior of some standing, and if you intend to use your dagger, then stop hesitating and do so. Elrond paused for effect before he stated, I will not mourn your passing, but I will see that your remains are disposed. Glorfindel sighed, dramatically stating, you always ruin my fun. He put his dagger away with a flourish of movement and looked at Harry with renewed interest. A ferret? Really? That is a new one. I have never... Harry didn't allow the elf to finish his sentence, as he quickly transfigured Glorfindel into a golden puppy. Glorfindel puppy sat on his rump, looking around in confusion before yipping at Harry. The twins burst into a raucous laughter at the sight. Harry just shrugged, and before he could change the elf back again, Glorfindel puppy ran up to the wizard and began nipping at his ankle. Harry hopped back. Hey, stay still so I can stop that. Glorfindel puppy listened to the wizard and stopped nipping at Harry's leg. The golden canine pulled a few more times at the wizard's pant leg before looking up at Harry. Glorfindel puppy tilted his head as if in contemplation and then promptly raised his leg to urinate on Harry's leg. The wizard cried out and scurried back out of range. Harry had his wand out and aimed at the pup that was still yapping at him. Harry wrinkled his nose. That's disgusting. The golden canine growled once more before Harry managed to undo the magic. Glorfindel huffed indignantly and straightened his clothing. The others were all grinning or chuckling at the spectacle. Arwen's shoulder shook with laughter. Thank you. I haven't had a reason to laugh in days. Glad I could help. The wizard shrugged sheepishly at his mother's questioning look. At least I didn't shed any blood. Galadriel pursed her lips, more to keep from laughing than in annoyance. The lady motioned to her granddaughter and daughter to follow. Come, let us leave the children to their shenanigans. During the 2 days of preparing the boats for the journey to Gondor, Arwen was often seen hounding the steps of Elrohir. Aladon had seemed to find it amusing until he caught sight of his sister's red-rimmed eyes, for that was when his laughter failed him. Harry spent his hours on guard duty or training, both magical and weapons. It was rare to see the young wizard resting apart from mealtime when Galadriel insisted that he join the family in the dining hall. Eladon took up his fighting stance and watched as Harry took his own. The two opponents held their weapons at the ready, waiting for the other to move first. Harry held his long daggers parallel to the ground, waiting, watching as Eladon skillfully swung his pair. An arrow sped past Harry's head from the sideline as the wizard shifted his weight to his right leg to weave backwards out of the projectile's path. Eladon took advantage of the distraction and rushed forward to press his attack. with the elf swords dancing. As usual, Harry had to dodge. The wizard was at a disadvantage, and there was no opening he could see to parry. Harry managed to deflect a thrust towards his side and block another to his leg. The young man was on the defensive and grit his teeth as he once again dodged a blow, this time to the shoulder, but was slapped hard on the thigh with the side of Eladon's blade for his lack of attention. Harry hissed in pain and retook his stance. Eladon nodded his approval and repositioned himself before his uncle. Again! They had been sparring for over an hour. The wizard was exhausted, but refused to back down. Harry took the offensive and thrust his sword at Eladon's torso, fully expecting it to be blocked, but the parry to his shoulder had the wizard hissing again. "You are wasting your time," came the jibe from the sidelines. Both combatants ignored the outsider and concentrated on the fight at hand. Eladon parried, Harry dodged, and weaved. "He favors his left," came the voice again. The clang of metal meeting metal became hypnotic as Harry searched for his rhythm. Eladon blocked. Harry deflected. Harry's eyes narrowed and Eladon's lip twitched when the voice continued, giving unasked for assistance. "Finish him." 2 minutes later, Harry countered with a practiced riposte and finished the training session with a spell. It wasn't cast at his opponent, but struck its intended target squarely in the chest all the same. Harry grinned triumphantly when he heard the telltale yip from the golden pup and the soft thump of the bow falling on the earth. "Oh, do you have your mirror?" Luna asked suddenly. Looking curious, Harry pulled his mirror from his pocket and handed it to her. The pair sat at the table with a pair of matching mirrors. Luna was swiftly etching runes on Harry's mirror to match the other, fussing with their backs. Galadriel looked over as her daughter etched and was soon sitting at the table with her children, watching in interest. "I thought of this a few days ago. With us going to Minas Tirith, then parting our separate ways," Luna looked up at her mother, asking, "May I see yours as well?" Naturally, Galadriel said as she handed over her small mirror, "That one is not yours?" Harry asked in surprise, as there were now 3 matching mirrors. Galadriel cupped her son's cheek. "Just because you are currently home, you are not always at my side. What if you had need of me, and I did not have it with me? What kind of mother would I be?" Harry just grinned while fighting and losing the battle, not to blush. There, Luna said triumphantly, "Brother, I will need 3 drops of blood on the runes of each of these. Mother, you as well." The 2 complied as Luna also added 3 drops of her blood. Then she held the 3 mirrors in a stack out to Harry. Now just a bit of magic. Harry pushed a small amount of his magic into the mirrors. When they grew warmer and glowed a soft blue, Luna beamed happily. "Perfect." The mirrors were returned to their owners and Luna spoke to hers. "Nothrim." Both Galadriel's and Harry's mirrors vibrated. When they both answered, each mirror was halved so they could view the other 2. Harry grinned at his sister. "Brilliant." Luna beamed. They still function as normal, only now they have an added feature of connecting all 3 together at the same time. Galadriel's smile grew soft, and she hugged her daughter. "You have always been so clever, my little moon. Thank you for this gift." Leaving Lothlorien brought yet another sense of déjà vu to Harry. Unlike their first departure by boat, the gathered travelers boarded longer, wider boats, shaped much like graceful white swans. The first boat carried Elrond, Glorfindel, Arwen, and the twins. The second boat carried Galadriel, Celeborn, Luna, and Harry. Each was protected by smaller boats, manned by Imladris and Lothlorien guards. Harry watched ashore with unease. Luna reached over and held Harry's hand. He gave her a small smile. "I was thinking, it's going to be very different, taking the boats directly to Gondor." Luna gave his hand a small squeeze. The young wizard took comfort in his sister's touch and dutifully watched the trees for any danger. Unlike the first trip down the river, they didn't make for land at night. The elves kept the boats moving, slowly, skillfully, smoothly, straight for their destination. That's not to say the boats never stopped. They pulled over to the shore occasionally for breaks, but these stops only lasted 15 to 20 minutes at a time. Their last stop was at Gileath. When they pulled over to the shore, the reactions varied. Those that fought at the Battle of Pelennor Fields, or in Luna and Harry's case, had at least seen the damage done during the war, were lost in reflection. Those that hadn't were shocked at the destruction, but respectfully kept their comments to themselves. The guards tied the boats to the damaged dock before the passengers disembarked one by one. Harry paused and stared at the ruins. Arwen was growing more anxious to get to Minas Tirith, so Elrond motioned for his daughter to continue their journey. The Imladris elves began walking. The young wizard knew there were desperate people around and was weary about leaving the boats exposed and unprotected. Luna saw Harry's hesitation. She was by his side immediately, and while she spoke, the boats departed back to Lothlorien. We will be parting from the White City by alternate means. Celeborn had stayed back with his children while Galadriel stood at the edge of the ruined city with her guards. The Lord was also looking at the destruction around them. He asked in his soft, melodic tone, "You know repairing spells. Will you repair this city?" "No," Harry answered just as softly. Celeborn didn't seem surprised by his answer, but Luna was. His sister stared at him in confusion until Harry elaborated. "We know I can throw spells, but that will only pull the bricks back together and not truly repair the city. Each town has a soul, a heart. That kind of repair requires someone that knows the place to point out how things were, or should be." Luna wrapped her hand into the crook of her brother's arm, much as their mother did with their father, and they followed their parents to Minas Tirith. The young elf gifted Harry with a rather Luna-esque, wistful smile. "That was rather poetic. Why do you always sound so surprised?" "It is rather insulting," Harry deadpanned. Her tinkling laughter filled the air, and their walk through the broken city of Osgiliath seemed that much brighter. Unfortunately, Luna's amusement was short-lived as they made their way through Pelennor Fields. The area was still littered with dead Oliphants and horses, along with various other unpleasant things. Harry carried on their earlier conversation with their parents. "I believe most of Minas Tirith still stands. We have not yet been beyond the city gates." The Fellowship had set up numerous tents outside the walls for healing, to protect the broken gates, and to rest. Luna added conspiratorially, Aragorn did not want to enter the city since they did not yet know of his status as their new king and their current ruler. The steward still lives. That is what Aragorn said anyhow. "Denethor was the last steward," said Galadriel. "He was father to Boromir of the Fellowship and the youngest son, Faramir. Faramir is the steward that sent the request for Angrenost." "Boromir and Faramir," Harry repeated. "I did not meet Denethor. It was Faramir who told me of Boromir's death." The conversation came to an end after that. Each of the travelers was lost in their own thoughts. They had been walking for nearly an hour in silence before Luna asked, "Did you know many of the Fellowship are royalty or noblemen?" "Aragorn, obviously," Harry prompted. "Then Boromir, son of the Steward of Gondor." "Obviously," Luna agreed. "Legolas, the Prince of Mirkwood Boromir, the son of the Steward of Gondor, and Gimli, nephew of the Lord of Moria." "Really?" Harry asked incredulously. "Even the belching Gimli is a noble." "Even Gimli," Luna confirmed with a soft giggle. "What about the Pyrien?" "Pyrien do not believe in royalty," Luna explained. "They are simple folk that believe in a democracy. But if you want to have a comparison, they do have a thrain or mayor." "We have arrived," Celeborn interrupted. They had reached the tents where human guards stood and watched the approaching elves. The Imladris travelers stopped a safe distance away and waited. The Lothlorien elves soon joined them. The elven guards gripped their bows but did not nock an arrow. The humans gripped the pommels of their swords but did not draw them. No one spoke. No one moved. Elladan and Elrohir finally looked up and huffed, walking around the Imladris guards. Harry and Luna joined them. Harry didn't remember the guards' names, but he had seen them a time or two and was pleased to see both men breathe easier upon seeing the siblings. The blonde gave the pair a small smile and both nodded their welcome. Harry paused and looked back at the field. "I see the farmers have started working the fields." "Yes," the blonde guard said. "We may not see a crop until the spring, but it's more than we hoped for after that battle." "Luna," Harry gestured, "can you take them to our tent? I'm sure our parents would appreciate some tea." Elladan and Elrohir both grinned widely at the prospect of their reactions. Celeborn looked skeptical until he spotted the wizard's tent and laughed. Luna nodded eagerly. "Oh yes, we should invite them all for tea." It was nice getting to visit with the friends he made within the Fellowship. Harry was most pleased to see that Merry was awake and doing much better, even if he hadn't been cleared to leave the healing tent yet. Sam made sure to cook for the Hobbit several times a day. Frodo, Sam, and Pippin took Merry his meals and stayed with him until Madame Iarith kicked them out for being too loud, mischievous, or causing some form of mayhem in hopes of keeping Merry entertained. Harry conjured a chair and took a seat beside Merry's cot. Merry was sitting cross-legged with his blanket pulled around his lap. Frodo and Sam told us about everything. Merry leaned closer. "Did you really talk to the Nazgul?" Chuckling, Harry admitted, "We did. There was one that couldn't speak Westron any longer, but others could translate for us." "And a giant spider?" "Huge," Harry agreed, though he didn't bother mentioning that they didn't actually see it. Harry had seen Aragog. That was close enough for him. Merry fidgeted, and Harry waited. It was obvious that the Hobbit had something on his mind. Eventually, Merry said, "But the Witch King, he was here." "Sure," Harry nodded in agreement. "Shortly after we got to Minas Morgul, Ermerizor had to leave for Osgiliath. You talk about him like..." Merry's words faded out, and again Harry waited. Sure, Harry could guess what was on the Hobbit's mind, but it would be better to let him talk. The wait was longer that time. Merry's hands were balled into fists when he finally said he killed a lot of people. "A lot of people killed. A lot of people were killed. It was a war, Merry. You can't only blame Ermerizy for all the deaths." Merry huffed. Apparently, Harry didn't understand what the Hobbit was trying to convey, because Merry tried again. "Nazgul are evil." "Not all of them," Harry frowned and changed his response. "I'm not sure if any of them really were. They all accepted the ring, thinking they were going to do good for their people. None of them knew that Sauron had tricked them. By the time they knew, it was too late for them." Merry didn't look appeased by what Harry had to say, and the wizard shrugged. "They didn't want to be ringwraiths, Merry. They didn't want to serve Sauron. They just didn't have a choice until I came and gave them one." The Hobbit wrapped his arms around his torso, frowning in thought. Harry tried once more. "You met Adunafel by the river. Was he evil?" "I guess not. Adunafel didn't attack us. He asked to be released." "And faded away," Merry said softly. "And faded away," Harry repeated, rubbing the back of his neck. Merry asked, "Things aren't simple anymore, are they?" "What do you mean?" "Things used to be good or bad. Now things that we thought were bad weren't all bad. Some we thought was good wasn't all good." Merry's words made Harry think of the Nazgul and Saruman and the misconceptions regarding both. "That's right, Merry." Harry gripped the Hobbit's shoulder, giving it a gentle squeeze. "Life is not black and white. We live in a world of grays." It didn't take long for Harry to grow restless again. With no patients to look after and no guard duty to perform, Harry decided to go back to clearing Pelennor Field. While he had managed to clear one area before they left back to Lolarian. Large as it may have been, it wasn't enough. There were so many people living in Minas Tirith, and they relied on the farms for food. Harry was working his way through what he felt would be a good place to start again when he was waylaid by Merry, who was recently discharged from the healing tent. The Hobbit was in full uniform, sans helmet, and was escorting the Princess of Rohan. When they reached Harry, Merry stopped to perform proper introductions. "My Lady Eowyn, may I present to you Harry, son of Lady Galadriel and Lord Celeborn of Lothlorien. He is the Wizard of Prophecy. Harry, this is Lady Eowyn, Maiden of the Sword, Princess of Rohan." Merry smiled broadly when Eowyn laughed at the Esquire's choice of titles. Eowyn waved off the Hobbit, Maiden of the Sword. That's a new one. Well, now Merry crossed his arms and raised an eyebrow when he asked, "Who but the maiden could slay the king of Angmar?" With the help of the king's esquire, no less. Eowyn reminded Merry, and the two smiled at their own wordplay. Merry shot a glance at Harry as he listened in silent amusement. Eowyn turned her gaze to Harry, and he was finally able to greet her properly. "It is an honor to meet the Maiden of the Sword." Eowyn blushed and chuckled. "A pleasure to meet you, Harry, Wizard of Prophecy. What brings you out to the field? It isn't a very hospitable place." Harry looked around them and had to agree. "I've taken it upon myself to help clean up what I can. War is hard on the people, and it's just as hard on the land. You seem familiar." Eowyn looked at Harry and cocked her head in thought. "Is that possible?" "Anything is possible," Harry said, "though this is our first official meeting. I was a part of the group that helped find all those injured in the field, and I helped heal injuries in the healing tents." Eowyn said, in thought, "I was rather indisposed both of those times." Harry thought about bringing up his Patronus as a possibility as to why he seemed familiar, but then he'd have to explain, and so what brings you two out here? We're searching for the spot where we were both injured, Mary explained. Harry looked around distractedly. I'm afraid it was very late at night when you two were found. I don't think I'm going to be of any help. Maybe you remember seeing a dead hellhawk. Eowyn tried. Harry nodded because that made sense. He then closed his eyes. That way, it's faint, but let's try looking in that direction. Mary smiled at Harry. That's great, thanks Harry, and began walking in the direction Harry suggested. Eowyn wasn't as quick to follow. She stared at the wizard, frowning. Harry ignored the woman and fell in step with Mary, figuring the lady would eventually join them. Or not, which she naturally did. Eowyn now had questions. What did you do? Magic, Harry shrugged. Mary had introduced him as a wizard. Wasn't Gandalf mysterious? The old man was constantly doing weird things, but Eowyn was still looking at him and Harry gave in. I cast my senses out and looked for any sign that could direct us. Harry didn't say he searched for traces of Ermurazor and not that dead beast. He was pretty sure Eowyn wouldn't be too thrilled to hear that. Harry walked with the unlikely pair until they came to the very spot that they were searching for. There, beneath the rotting corpse of King Theoden's horse, was the king's sword. Mary waited until Harry lifted the decaying horse with magic before he took the sword in his arms, ignoring the filth and stench, held it to his body reverently. Thanks, Harry. Happy to help, Harry set the horse down, waved his farewell, and moved back to where he had been working, away from Eowyn's curious gaze. Harry was monitoring his latest inferno, staring sightlessly at the dancing flames, and wondered what it said about him that he found the whole procedure therapeutic. Later, Harry would allow himself to reflect on how the dead, in various forms, seemed to be his companion lately. For now, Harry refused to dwell on such negative things. He had work to do. The young wizard looked around and wondered, not for the first time, if he'd ever finish burying the dead and, more importantly, why he felt that it was his responsibility to carry out the task. Soft shuffling steps were coming his way. Harry remained looking out across Pelennor Field, pondering who it could be, and waited for the person's arrival. A few farmers had been tilling the land, not that they had sought him out, so Harry doubted it was any of them. Besides, they were working diligently on the first clearing. The shuffling came to a stop beside him. Harry waited. A breeze picked up briefly, flapping the old man's white robes around his ankles. In reflection, Harry wondered where this newfound calm had come from. The Gryffindor wasn't known for his patience. Harry was brash, impetuous, and hot-tempered. Perhaps age, the wars, or his quasi-hidden Slytherin side was showing because Harry still waited quietly. The young man didn't feel the need to break the peaceful silence. The old wizard leaned on his staff and finally spoke. Your work seems rather therapeutic. Is that why you're doing it? Partly, Harry admitted, plus everyone seems busy preparing for weddings, the coronation, even farming. I feel restless. I want to leave to continue on with the last part of the prophecy, but I can't leave until Nabeth gives me leave to do so. I'm rather certain your sister would be rather disappointed if you were to leave before her wedding, Gandalf said with a chuckle. Harry hummed in agreement and asked, what brings you out here? Harry peered at Gandalf. Unless you really came out here to talk about burning the dead. Partly, Gandalf said, a bit tongue-in-cheek. Harry grinned at the old man. Gandalf finally got to the point. I was speaking with Frodo and Sam yesterday. They told me of your visit to Manus Morgul. They said you released the Nazgul from their curse. Harry watched Gandalf as he spoke. The old man looked contemplative. I was hoping you would agree to speak with the White Council. I imagine they'd be most interested in what you accomplished. Who is on this council? Harry didn't like the direction the conversation was headed. There are currently 6 members of the White Council, 2, Radagast, the Brown, and Nawe, also known as Citterdan, are currently elsewhere. Gandalf smiled at Harry. The other 4 you are familiar with. There is Elrond, Lord of Rivendell, Glorfindel, Lord of the Golden Flower. Harry tried and most likely failed to hide his smirk. Myself, Gandalf the White, and Galadriel, Lady of Lorien, also known to you as your mother. That took Harry by surprise. Naneth. Harry tilted his head in thought. Does she know you're asking me to speak with the council?
No, Gandalf admitted. I have not approached the council about this. I was hoping you'd come with me and meet with them.
Harry nodded and pulled his mirror from his pocket. Nth? In seconds, Galadriel was on the connection, smiling at her son. Ionig. Do you have time to meet in my tent with the rest of the White Council? Harry nodded towards Gandalf. Not that Galadriel knew he was, since the White Wizard wasn't standing where she could see him. Gandalf would like us to meet, and I know you're busy. If Gandalf is asking for us to convene, then it is important enough to interrupt our preparations. Galadriel looked away from the mirror momentarily and spoke to someone that Harry couldn't see. We will have a meeting of the White Council. Gather the others. Bring them to my son. With a nod, Galadriel's attention was back to Harry. I will be there shortly. After all, not everyone can pop all over Middle-earth, she said with a wink and signed off. Harry looked at Gandalf and grinned widely when the man floundered. That's... Gandalf stepped closer and asked, How did you do that? Handing the old man the mirror, he told him. Luna is brilliant with runes. Where I'm from, these aren't overly common, but they do exist. Luna figured out the correct rune sequences and made this set, then later tied a third one to them. I've been able to keep in contact with my family since I left with the Fellowship. Gandalf ran a gentle finger across the runes. Your magic is intriguing. Harry accepted his mirror back and put it in his pocket. It took a while before the bonfire was nothing more than smoldering ashes. With the shield down, Harry ensured the ashes were buried deeply within the soil. He wasn't sure how much time had passed since he spoke with his mother and told Gandalf, We should head back. Harry paused. What he was saying got a mischievous glint in his eyes and offered the old man his arm. Can you trust me to get you back safely?
Am I going to experience your magic firsthand?
If you can trust me, yes. How exciting, Gandalf acquiesced, stepping forward, and without hesitation, putting his hand on Harry's forearm. Harry nodded and prompted 3 calming breaths, and count to 3. Gandalf looked excited, took the 3 breaths, and counted 1. As nothing bad happened, nothing at all happened, Gandalf's grip loosened slightly. 2. Harry placed his hand over Gandalf's to make sure the old man didn't let go, spun on the spot, and appeared with a soft pop back in his bedroom within the wizarding tent. 3, Harry said, for the elderly man. With a groan, Gandalf tightened his grip on Harry's arm. The old man croaked out, That was unpleasant. True, Harry patted Gandalf's hand in sympathy, but it's the fastest form of magical travel that I know. Harry walked over to fill a glass of water and handed it to the wizard. And do you travel this way often? Gandalf accepted the glass, thank you. Yes, Harry admitted, though it isn't always safe to do it. If I'm not familiar with the destination, or I don't have a safe spot, then it isn't an option. Traveling by apparition on your own isn't as jarring on your body. I can take 1 person with me, regardless of the distance. 2, if the destination is closer by. Harry walked out of his bedroom, fully expecting the elder wizard to follow him. More than that, and I risk injury to me or those with me. Not a good option when we can fly or walk, and I recently learned how to make a portkey. That's very considerate of you, Gandalf commented, and stopped when he saw they weren't alone in the tent. The elderly man raised his water glass in greeting, adding a candid nod of his head, and a large smile as Galadriel made her way over to Harry. Greetings, my friends. We meet again. Galadriel stopped fussing over her son and smiled serenely at Gandalf. Celeborn raised his glass of elven wine, as did Elrond. Glorfindel's gaze was narrowed at the young wizard as he fully ignored the elderly man. Gandalf, for his part, looked surprised with Glorfindel's mistrustful gaze and looked at Harry in confusion. Harry was grinning innocently back at Glorfindel. Neither said a word to each other, but much was being stated by both. Gandalf cleared his throat and set the water glass down on the table. I was just speaking with Harry about a story told to me by Frodo and Sam regarding their journey to Mordor. Knowing Celeborn wasn't named as part of the White Council, Harry wasn't surprised to see the man move as if to leave. Harry shook his head. Please stay, Eta. You already know most of what Gandalf wants to discuss, and I'd really like you to be here. Celeborn didn't look around the table for confirmation. He stood and walked to his son to sweep him into a hug. Celeborn spoke into Harry's hair and told him, Of course I will stay with you. There's nothing to worry about, though. They wouldn't dare try to turn against you. Not with your mother sitting on the council. Harry chuckled and squeezed his father before releasing his hold. I'm not worried, I just feel that having you here may help explain some things about me and a certain title. Celeborn and Galadriel both nodded at that. Harry moved to set wards at the door before taking a seat at the table between his parents. As I was saying, Gandalf began. The stories told by Frodo and Sam are most fascinating, but there is one story in particular that has my attention. Galadriel took Harry's hand in hers and asked, which story is so compelling that we needed to gather the White Council? How Harry managed to free the Nazgul, releasing them from their cursed rings. Gandalf said, for those of us that were here during the battle, it was no surprise to see a Nazgul with the enemy. What was surprising, though, is there was only one. The Witch King of Angmar. Galadriel said,
You know?
Gandalf asked. I know enough, Galadriel said, but you have questions, no doubt. Questions my son may not care to answer, and will not be forced to do so, regardless of your curiosity. Harry smiled at his mother and gave her hand a gentle squeeze. If I even answer a few questions, it will only lead to more. I don't mind. I have nothing to hide. Harry shifted his attention to his father. Will you tell them the story of the three brothers? You are, after all, the one who told me. Celeborn laughed in surprise and agreed. If that is what you wish, then told the story of how Harry became the Master of Death. Glorfindel's gaze hardened as the tale ended. Gandalf sat back, looking stunned. Elrond looked pensive, lost in thought. Galadriel squeezed Harry's hand before brushing his hair from his eyes and smiling at him. Elrond asked as Harry pulled his moleskin pouch from around his head and set it on the table. You have these legendary items? Yeah, Harry said, shrugging. I figured someone would ask about them. He opened the bag and summoned the hollows, setting the wand and stone on the table. The cloak he handed to his father, who grinned like a child with a shiny new toy. Galadriel smiled indulgently and warned her husband, do not wander off. There is a ceremony we must attend today. Celeborn had Elrond and Gandalf distracted as he donned the cloak. The pair oohed and awed at the silky fabric. Glorfindel sat back, crossed his arms, and frowned. What exactly is the Master of Death, and what does any of this have to do with the Nazgul? That's the story Frodo and Sam told Gandalf. Harry told him, our first encounter with a Nazgul was on the Branduin near Sarngabr. Adunafel was sitting on his flying lizard. Elrond choked on his elf wine. Gandalf sputtered a laugh. Glorfindel wasn't amused and continued to glare. Honestly, the elf had no sense of humor when it came to Harry. Celeborn snickered and Galadriel patted Harry's hand and corrected him. Hellhawk, dear. Adunafel didn't attack, just sat there staring, waiting. I went over to him and he knelt. He asked me to release him, and I did. When the others just stared at him, Harry shrugged. I pulled the ring from his finger to break the connection to Sauron and released his soul to death. That was it. But mortals cannot kill the Nazgul, Glorfindel argued. I didn't kill him. They're already dead. Harry corrected the elf. I broke the curse on him. His soul was released. He was no longer tethered to the ring or Sauron, so he wasn't dragged back again as a ring wraith. And you did this with all of the Nazgul except the Witch King? Glorfindel asked for clarification. Eventually, I did that for all of them, including the Witch King. Harry answered with a correction. We had gone to Minas Morgul, where I released all but Urmarazor. He went to Osgiliath first, and was released after Frodo destroyed the One Ring. They fell here at Pelennor Field, Gandalf reminded Harry. Did you release him out there? No. Deacon Dor explained what happened to them every time their body was destroyed. Harry winced as he told them. They were reformed in their quarters at Minas Morgul. It took them a day to recover enough power to move again, and he said it grew more painful each time. So, after Frodo dropped the ring into the lava of Mount Doom, we popped back to Minas Morgul where we found Urmarazor on his bed. Without meaning to, Harry summoned the man's ring from his bag. Harry sighed softly before showing it to them. Urmarazor believed he wasn't worthy of peace. When he went to Osgiliath, it was to subvert Sauron's attention away from what I was doing, releasing his brothers, and what Frodo needed to do, destroy the One. But with his brothers gone, all of Sauron's focus, his power, and influence was concentrated on him. Eventually, Urmarazor gave into the compulsions pressed upon him. He joined in the battle here, killing all that got in his way, and he fell. Harry laid the ring on the table beside the resurrection stone. There, sitting innocently, was a simple band of silver. Harry summoned one of the other rings from the bag. When it landed in his hand, he turned it slowly. There is no more power within them. The others watched him, curiosity obvious in their expressions. Harry continued, "This ring belonged to Kamul, an angry wraith that even at the end still believed in what they were tasked to do by Sauron." Gandalf hesitantly reached forward, waiting for the okay before touching the ring sitting innocently on the table. Elrond held his hand out for the one in Harry's hand, and the young wizard handed it over. Kamul ranted in a language I didn't understand, but the meaning was pretty easy to translate. Harry ignored the rings the others held and summoned the third ring. This one, Harry closed his eyes a moment before continuing. Yuvatha, that ring soon sat in his left palm, and he summoned another Dwar and another G. Indor, Akor Hel, Adunafel, Ren, Hormarath. Harry met Glorfindel's gaze and explained they each wished for release, even the angry ones, and were grateful, thanking me for their final rest, except Hormarath. Gandalf grinned, placing the ring with the others in Harry's open palm. Would that be the one who apologized to Frodo? The others around the table looked shocked at Gandalf's question. Elrond asked, "A Nazgul apologized to the Hobbit. Before being released, Hormarath knelt so he wasn't towering over us and apologized for his role in any pain that Frodo went through." Harry smiled at the memory. "Why do you insist on calling them by name? They're Nazgul, nothing more than evil wraiths."
Harry met Glorfindel's gaze. His brows furrowed at the anger coming from the elf, and shrugged. Because they were once human, kings among men. I don't think anyone's been able to speak with them in ages. They took the rings for power, certainly, but also in hopes of keeping peace for their people, not to become what they were reduced to.
"What will you do with these?" Elrond asked, finally handing back the ring he was inspecting. Each ring became dormant when the one was destroyed. There's still the potential of magic inside the metal. It's as if they could easily accept magic, but there's no longer a taint of evil to the rings. Both Gandalf and Elrond nodded in agreement. Harry put his right hand over his left, closed his eyes, and a soft glow of light began between his palms. Then Harry grinned and opened his hands. The Hallows, Celeborn, let out a delighted laugh at what he saw. The rings were now combined and reshaped. Within Harry's outstretched hand sat a single pendant. A symbol, his symbol, the Deathly Hallows. Harry handed the pendant to his father. Celeborn shook his head, still highly amused. How fitting. Galadriel accepted the symbol from her husband. Her face registered delight and surprise. "It's warm, not just warm, it's filled with hope, peace, love." Harry shrugged. "I thought of everything the kings had wished for when they first accepted their ring, before they were corrupted and warped into Sauron's pawns." Gandalf looked fascinated, as he usually did when it came to Harry's magic. "You learned all this from the rings?" "From the rings, and from the kings themselves." Harry took the pendant back once it made its way around the table and turned it over in his hand. "This'll make a lovely gift for my sister. I owe her so much for the support she's given me." Harry's voice softened as if speaking more to himself than to the older wizard. "First, I will add a few protection charms." "Protection?" Gandalf's brows furrowed in thought as he nodded. "Yes. One can never be too cautious." Glorfindel peered at the pendant. He had barely touched the thing before passing it along. "How does the symbol represent these hallows?" While Celeborn explained, Elrond leaned forward and asked Harry, "What are you doing to complete the last part of the prophecy?" This dark wizard, Galadriel, stated, "We have scouts out searching for him." Gandalf frowned. "You believe Saruman still has power, as his magic?" "He did mine magic on the first 2 scouts." Harry confirmed. "I also think he tested his strength against others by spreading rumors. Rumors that made it all the way to Emladris about Elrohir." Elrond winced at the reminder. "That is troublesome," Gandalf admitted. "An elf's mind and will is strong. It would take compelling magic to bend their free will." "And he managed it," Harry agreed. The young wizard looked at the tent flap entrance. "Someone is trying to get in." The others looked in the same direction. Celeborn asked, "How late is it?" Harry picked up his wand and gave it a wave. Everyone watched as numbers appeared. "The ceremony starts in an hour's time." "My goodness, is it that late already?" Gandalf struggled to get up in his rush to leave. "I must attend Aragorn. The king waits for no man. Or more accurately, I need to ensure the boy doesn't try to run away before he becomes king once and for all. The Lothlorien guards were all dressed in their shiny golden armor, unlike Harry, who was wearing shimmering white gold. Haldir stood as the ranking officer, which meant his helm had a red plume at the top that matched his red cloak. Galadriel, Celeborn, and Luna wore their traditional white finery. Legolas stood among them in a splendid silver-embroidered tunic. Somehow Harry found himself on babysitting duty again. The hobbits had become friends of his during their journey, and so he really didn't mind. Unfortunately, the five of them were standing on a bit of a raised dais, so the hobbits could see the activities, which naturally drew attention to them. Of course, having Frodo and Sam flanked by Pippin wearing his Gondorian guard uniform and Merry in his Rohan Esquire uniform didn't help matters. Add to that, a human wearing elven guard finery standing slightly behind the four, it was hard for the five to blend in with any crowd. Aragorn and Gandalf stood at the steps to the tower hall as a gathering of people were crammed into every available spot. Each of the attendees were dressed in their finest garments. Luna had developed a runic scheme that Harry was tasked to imbue with his magic. It acted as a temporary sonorous charm on both Aragorn and Gandalf, making each person in the audience feel as if they were close enough to touch the two men, which created a buzz of excitement and wonder throughout the onlookers. A well-appreciated breeze kicked up a flurry of white flower petals, and a new excited murmur swept through the crowd. Harry looked at Sam, who was grinning widely. The Hobbit stage whispered, "It's the tree. They took down the last one and buried it. It was dead. Strider brought a new one, and I helped them plant it. It's the symbol of Gondor and its king." Harry swept his gaze over the people silently watching the ceremony. It had been going on for at least 30 minutes. There was talk about the tree, but Harry had tuned out Gandalf's droning explanation. The old wizard's voice came across once more, catching Harry's attention. Now come the days of the king. As he placed the crown on Aragorn's head, Gandalf continued softly, "May they be blessed." Aragorn looked up at Gandalf before he rose and faced the crowd. Every man, woman, child, elf, dwarf, and hobbit cheered. The new king said a few words, but the cheering was deafening, and Harry refused to make the soreness more powerful and possibly injure any eardrums. The new king went immediately to his future wife, and more cheers erupted. Harry had stopped watching the procession and was looking around at the individuals gathered to watch the coronation, so it came as a small surprise to the teen when the entire platform became silent again. Aragorn and Arwen had made it to their dais. Harry struggled not to fidget as everyone's attention was drawn to them again. The four hobbits were very happy for their friend and went to bow, but the new king stopped them. Aragorn spoke softly, but was heard by all courtesy of the runic sonorous, "My friends, you bow to no one." With that declaration, Aragorn dropped to one knee before the hobbits. The entirety of the crowd soon followed suit in a wave that began with those nearest the dais. Frodo and Sam looked wide-eyed at Harry, who chuckled softly, but Frodo began to panic at the attention. The hobbit looked to his best friend. Only Sam looked just as lost for words as he was. The ring-bearer then sputtered, but Harry gave Frodo's shoulder a squeeze and said softly, "You are heroes. Let them have this moment. It's more for them than for you." When Frodo nodded nervously, Harry, Merry, and Pippin backed a step and joined the others, honoring Sam and Frodo.